AskReddit. You've been given a ray gun that multiplies the size of its targets by 100. What do you shoot to cause the most chaos and confusion? A lizard, or the Godzilla statue in Japan. Imagine a giant juiced-up Komodo dragon. No thank you. One obscure island in the Pacific. Going to make people believe Atlantis is back, baby. Atlantis and Pacific for added confusion. The British Empire would like to know your location. Giant squid. Imagine all the people thinking Cthulhu is actually real and he is awake. Calm down, Ozymandias. A chicken. It would essentially be a dinosaur. Cassowary, if you honest to goodness want to cause some mess. OP said confusion, not extinction level event. Pluto is now a planet, again. That would cause both chaos and confusion. If you multiplied its size, assuming mass is included, by 100, its gravitational pull would greatly increase. This would start tugging at everything else. I don't have the brain cells to figure out what would happen, but some things would change. A few dozen eggs. Imagine the chaos. Shoot eggs in different parts of the world and make the silly humans think that aliens are trying to colonize us. Probably a sequoia. Imagine the confusion when there's all of a sudden a 200,000-foot tree. Sounds like a good way to start a religion. Depends on how it works. If the mass is kept constant, then no point in shooting the moon, so I'd just shoot a few sharks or giant squids and have people go crazy over megalodons and krakens. If you shoot the moon, we are in for some serious planet collision apocalyptic stuff. Yellowstone supervolcano. Well, thanks, big boom. A roll of toilet paper. Where would you put that, and how you gonna wipe with a 25-foot square? Imagine a giant ass whale. Y'all, I was medicated. I just meant a big whale, but 100 times its size. The ultimate giant whale. I'd rather not imagine an ass whale at all, to be honest. Mosquito. Mom, why is it raining blood? Is the world ending? The government shot down the Mondo mosquito, and yes, the world is ending. The Ito in Spanish means small, so that means El Mosquito is coming for little Timmy. Also, there's a movie called Rapture Palooza, where it's raining blood and a guy is freaking out in a I can't believe a guy would let something this unsanitary happen kind of way. LOL. A kitten. Adorable, but a terror. It'll take 9 attempts to finally bring it down. Confusion? A piece of toast. Put that in the middle of Central Park and shoot it. I wonder what it'd be like after some rain. A rubber duck to help out James Vietch. I would use it on a bunch of hummus. You can never have enough hummus. You know, I've heard hummus is a great investment right now. My nearly 4-year-old grandson. You want to talk chaos and confusion. Oh no, it's time. He's here. He's growing. He's manipulating the terrain. An anthill. That would suddenly become 15,000 gigantic ant monsters creeping and digging enormous gallery through Earth. If you're talking about an anthill, I guess you are referring to fire ants. If yes, then maybe 100 times bigger. They wouldn't be massive. But surely there wouldn't be 15,000 of those, more like 400,000. The Earth. Not sure if killing everyone is all that chaotic. If this is an immediate change, everyone just dies. If this doesn't increase mass, then the Earth would collapse in on itself as it goes back into a density equilibrium, killing everyone. On the other hand, if mass is increased, gravity increases immensely, killing everyone. An atom, but I would shoot it several times. You would have to shoot it about 10 times just to make it 1 centimeter long, or about 0.4 inches. Jupiter. If Jupiter were 100 times bigger, it would become another, though smaller, star in our solar system, which would be pretty cool. That is the plot of Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey 2010. Clive, where have you really been? Ants for sure. Ants become our friends, and we find all manner of fun ways to coexist, and there's a sitcom about it called The Pacific Ocean. Ha ha, goodbye everyone. Kevin Costner just got a stiffy. Yeah, give me a heads up. I'm hoarding dirt and making a sailboat. The baby of Rick Moranis, so we can all watch a live action, honey, I blew up the baby. The only way to force him out of retirement. I have good news. He is filming a new movie from this series called Shrunk. The sun or the moon? Either one would just kill us all. To be honest, it wouldn't cause a lot of chaos and confusion, but it'd be pretty sick to shoot like a pound of weed. Does it turn into 100 pounds of weed? That's good money right there. Should be enough to get you through quarantine. Anime figure of Miku. Figures are often made at a 7th scale though, right? So what you get is a Miku a little over 14 times normal size. Good. The living room chair. What's that? It's too tall to use, but not tall enough to hit the ceiling. Guess it's just stuck here then. What is its purpose now? To clog the hallway? The world may never know. That's how you turn a chair into a sophisticated art piece. My middle finger. Now, I'm just imagining someone dragging a 30-foot finger with them wherever they go, LOL. A giant millipede. At least it's a herbivore. It'd go around munching on trees and stuff. A giant centipede would be terrifying. I was gonna say the same. I'd much rather have a 100-times size millipede just harmlessly slither around. If I saw a 100-times centipede coming my way, I would legit just cry and shoot myself to save myself the misery. Just the thought of it is terrifying. That's just straight out of a sci-fi horror. 100-times centipede has to easily be in the top 3 of most terrifying insects at 100 times size. In terms of just looks alone, it beats out spiders by miles, literally and figuratively. My house. I think I would totally prefer to pay someone to build a 1/100th working scale model of some awesome home that is only 12,000 square feet or something. Then take it into the middle of nowhere and shoot it. Boom, Insta-mansion for cheap. My private part. Think of what I could do with a whole 4 inches. This was like my 3rd comment ever posting on Reddit, and it got 6.2 thousand upvotes. I love this community. Nice, you can now wear a condom. And you can trash that thimble you've been using. The ice caps. Hopefully that saves us a decade or 2. Proceeds to flood every coastal area in the world. Hell yeah, let's do a couple Amazonian trees while we're at it. My cat. Dynamax cat. Cat uses Max Quake. It's super effective on the earth. COVID-19. Big enough to shoot at with conventional weapons. It explodes out of the bodies of their hosts with a wish. 200,000+ instant casualties worldwide. Goodbye, Tom Hanks. Locking eyes with the agents who gave me the gun. I very slowly and deliberately point it straight to the ground and pull the trigger. The size of the entire Earth becomes 100 times larger. Not the power lines, not the subways, not the buildings, just the planet. One of 3 things would happen. 1. If mass stays the same, then almost all the infrastructure of Earth is destabilized and collapse. The power lines would rip as the points they connect move 100 times further apart. Satellites would smash into the ground, effectively removing all but short-wave radio signals for communication. Society would be crippled. 2. If mass increases 2, then the gravity of Earth is 100 times greater. Every single man-made object would crumple like tin. Every human would instantly die from the immense gravitational pull. The average person would weigh 80,000 kilograms or 80 metric tons. The increased gravitational pull of the moon would likely accelerate the decay of its orbit, causing it to collide with the Earth. But all the humans would be dead before then. Humanity as a whole would cease to exist, and an entirely new form of life would evolve, specially suited to the huge gravitational force. 3. If conditions are right, and I'm no astrologist or a physicist, then it's entirely possible that the supersized Earth would fall into the Sun due to increased gravitational forces. Or I could just shoot the Sun. Myself. Have fun being imprisoned at age 51 for the rest of your life. He'd have the thick extraterrestrial cellmates to bang though, so it wouldn't be that bad. The Higgs boson. To nitpick, Higgs bosons are particularly common. The Higgs field is, as it permeates all space. Analogously, if you change the energy of a single photon, nothing major would happen, and you wouldn't be able to detect the event with a particular detector. If you change the strength of the electromagnetic field itself, oops, all atoms wouldn't be in equilibrium anymore and would immediately and very aggressively try to reach it. In the case of the Higgs field changing, space itself would not be in equilibrium. We'd get a Big Bang 3, electric boogaloo. A landing airplane, preferably heading toward a city. Just when it's about to land, blam, I zap it. Its size instantly multiplies and the plane, now 100 times its size and weight, plows through the airport and barrels toward the city, inflicting millions of dollars worth of damage and killing large amounts of people. The massive plane destroys everything in its path with its built-up momentum and knocks even the tallest buildings over. Does its density decrease or does its mass increase? If the mass increases, where does the mass come from? Either or. And I can't give away the secret of my ray gun's energy source. That's classified information. Most chaos? A big huntsman spider. Most confusion? A starter motor for a 1998 Dodge Neon. Dodge Neon EV confirmed. Screw chaos and confusion. I'm going to shoot the first few batches of coronavirus vaccine. But after that, I'm going to buy as many gold coins as I can, shoot them, and live like a king forever. Well, if you make it this obvious, no one will fall for it, and the value of gold will fall. If you're smart about it, just get small pieces of gold, ascend small gold nuggets, and smelt those into really tiny gold bars, and shoot. AskReddit. What is the dumbest question you've been asked? A coworker of mine, without any context, asked me, "Is Ash Wednesday this Friday?" This sounds like the kind of person who believes the Facebook posts about Halloween falling on Friday the 13th this year, making it some sort of super devil day. Why do you wear glasses? Because my eyes aren't right. Cool, so what do the glasses do? They help me to see. Like what, night vision? I hate you, not my 15-year-old cousin asked this. His sister wears glasses. People sometimes ask me to remove my glasses, wave a hand in front of my face, and say, "Count the fingers." Seriously, I mean, people in their mid-20s still don't know how glasses work. Do you really think I can't count the fingers? People just ask me how bad my vision is because of the thickness of the lenses. I then let them try them on and always find their reactions pretty dang funny. I had one person who asked if my glasses let me see into the future. That was at the Ren Fair though, so I'm fine with it. During my exchange year in the US, I was sitting in my English class and we had a few minutes until class started, when one of the guys I spoke regularly to suddenly turns and asks me if I could speak English since I'm from Germany. I calmly asked him in what language we had been speaking just a second ago. It was pretty hilarious, and even our teacher had a good laugh with us. In short, guy asked me if I could speak English while we were talking in English. Are you a real black person? Your skin is too light. Thankfully, it was asked by a little kid, but it was so stupid that I still laugh about that years later. To be fair, I used to work at a porn store, and one year the movie 20 XXX's Hottest Black Porn Stars had Cassidy Banks on the front cover and the Irish redhead on the next DVD cover, who was still visibly white, had darker skin because of her tan. This has stuck in my mind because of A, the absurdity of it, and B, some train of thought about, well, if her skin is that light, I guess I see black just in her bone structure. Wait, Irish redheads can tan? I'm a redhead with Irish heritage and can get a burn from a light bulb. What nationality are you? Canadian. No, I mean what nationality? Do you mean heritage? Polish, I guess. No, listen. Nationality. I don't know what you're asking. Whispers. Nationality. Like, are you white, black, etc.? Just look at me. I'm white as snow, and that's not nation. Cool. I didn't want to assume anything. Won't they hatch? asked by a guy who had just thrown out 24 eggs that had just passed their expiration date. He was concerned about having 24 little chicks running around inside his refrigerator. Dude was a university-level science major. Heard a story from a PhD ninja once. I think it might be apocryphal, but I see why this might float around academic circles. Physics prof has supreme faith in his students, and to cut them some slack, one question on the exam was simply, if you let go of a pen on the moon, what happens to it? They had all the math down, but just about all of them got this simple plain English question wrong. It's easy to miss the forest for the trees when you're in a demanding field. How do you spell TV? To be fair, that one came from a young kid. Here's a runner-up from a middle-aged woman in a meat shop where I used to work. Grown woman. What's the difference between the cooked prawns and the raw prawns? Me. These are cooked and these aren't. GW. But these ones are pink and those are gray. At the same job, I was ringing up a young woman's purchases, and it turned out she didn't have enough cash to pay for them all. I suggested an item to take off that would bring the total just under what she had, but she decided to take off 2 more expensive items. This brought the total down more than enough, and I gave her change with her receipt. Her. Oh, looking at her change, then pointing at the 2 items. Do I have enough money for that now? On second thoughts, maybe I should have just put that one first. When I was working at my city zoo, a woman asked me if she was at the zoo. In order to ask me that question, this woman had to get off the train at a station called Zoo Station or drive into the parking lot on a road called Zoo Road. Then, she had to walk down a long hallway with lots of pictures of animals with the zoo's logo, which includes the word zoo under them. Then stand in a long-ass line in front of a huge picture of a koala and the words, "Welcome to the City Zoo," printed in 3-foot-high letters. I was also wearing a shirt and a hat with the zoo's name and a giraffe on it when she asked me this question. So how did you answer? I hope you said no. The zoo is across town on Aquarium Drive. I was so shocked I just said yes. Working in a coffee shop around mid-afternoon, a man walks in, glances around, and walks up to the counter. Me. Hey, what can I get for you? Him. Glances around the store more. Are you guys open? Mostly out of confusion, I also glanced around my store and I saw all of the other employees clearly working and our lobby full of people sitting, eating, drinking, etc. Me. Yes. I was inside a Walmart once for like 15 minutes looking around for various items. After 15 minutes of wandering around and getting weird looks from the employees, an announcement came over the intercom saying, "The store is now open." Both come from my days in the food industry. What are mashed potatoes? A woman who was definitely old enough to vote. Why did you ring this up as a steak burrito and not a vegetarian burrito? A man who asked me to put steak on his burrito. Had numerous customers ask me why I rung up cheeseburger instead of hamburger with cheese. No amount of explaining helped. As a 911 operator, a caller once asked, on an emergency line, what the weather would be like on Thanksgiving Day in a desert resort popular with off-roaders. That's located about 100 miles away from our city. It was April. It was an older woman concerned that her sons, who were planning this camping trip, would need to bring warmer clothes. As a hotel worker, that would be a normal question for us, honestly, but 911? What? Some people apparently think 911 is some kind of all-encompassing helpline. In this case, though, it's pretty likely that this was a troll, especially considering they were wanting weather information months in advance. What plant do shrimp grow on? My 20-year-old friend in college. In French, seafood is called fruits de mer, translating to fruits of the sea. Can see a kid ask me that. From the hotel industry, favorites are generally along the theme of, why didn't you tell me when I booked my reservation 6 months ago that it was going to rain today? Why is there traffic? Why didn't you warn me there'd be traffic in Manhattan? Why can't you just tell the cops to let me through? But my all-time favorite was at a hotel where, for various reasons, the lobby was not on the first floor. The only thing on the first floor as you came in was a bank of elevators by which you could then reach the lobby. Had a guest ask, in complete seriousness, why couldn't the taxi drop me off at the lobby? All the other hotels it drops me off at the lobby. All attempts to answer this were met with increasing rage on the part of the guest, because why couldn't the taxi come to the 8th floor? While watching Frozen with a group of friends, my brother's girlfriend, 30 minutes in, looks confused and upset and looks me in the eye and asks, if their parents died, are they still sisters? She'd been thinking about it for 30 minutes. I had to console her and let her know that if her parents died, her sister would still be her sister. That's adorable. I don't remember the dumbest thing I've been asked off the top of my head, but I remember when I was little and didn't really understand how years work. I asked my mom if I had been born in 1888 or 1988. Well, 1788 sounds about right. Someone asked me if my dog's eyes were naturally that color or if she was wearing colored contacts. What color are they? She has an ice blue one and a brown one, which makes the question even more ridiculous. Why wouldn't they have asked if my dog just lost one of her contacts? I'm a girl, and one time I was forced to have a play date with one of my mom's friend's son when I was younger, and we were bored and started asking questions about each other. And he asked me if it was possible for girls to poop. And I asked, do guys have kneecaps? How do I test to see if my turtle is gay? Is this really that dumb? I think most of us reach adulthood without a particularly developed turtle gaydar. Coming off an overseas flight carrying a 4-foot-tall framed, butt-wrapped painting, the customs officer, did you get that out of the country? I assumed he was kidding and answered, no, I take it with me everywhere I go. And that was it. Let me go through. I went on a month-long backpacking trip a few years back, so everything I needed was in a carry-on bag. So after I land in my home country, I bypass baggage claim and head for customs. As I walk up, the customs officer tells me baggage claim is over there. I inform him that I didn't check a bag. He starts to get suspicious and asks, where are your bags? So I point to my backpack. He responds, how did you spend 1 month out of the country without any luggage? I just kind of stare at him and say, I did laundry? How can I learn to read? Is there a book or something? Well, this is awkward, but I'm going to be the one to break it to you that your reading is as bad as my hearing. We were stopped at a light in a car while someone was driving us to school, and the girl next to me goes, how fast are we going right now? We were 14 at the time, so I can't even blame young age for that. Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's revolving at 900 miles an hour. Are you better than me? By some kid at a wedding where all kids, me too, were bored. I said yes, and then he wanted to be my friend. I would have said, of course, everyone is. I wasn't sure if that's true though. I guess I was a smart kid. Most people are as dumb as that little boy. Can you answer a rhetorical question for me? This was in a 911 call that I answered. She meant theoretical, but I was like, well, technically I can't, but ask away. But can you answer a rhetorical question for me is a rhetorical question. So you did answer it, and she did ask one. I thought, can you answer a rhetorical question for me is not a rhetorical question per se. AskReddit. Doctors of Reddit, what's the best asking for a friend story you've heard? Wife's dad is a urologist. When we first started dating, a friend of mine wanted her to ask if any of the penis enlargement pills were legit and actually worked. She went with the asking for a friend approach, and he immediately assumed she was talking about me. Thanks, babe. So do they? Asking for a friend. He said no, but I think you, your friend, should try anyways. One girl was interested in laxatives for a friend. She tried to learn everything about the dose, where what to buy, how to drink. She was brought in a week later with complete intestinal atony. She tried to lose weight so much and drank 2 or 3 tablets at a time. Oh, I have more stories like that, LOL. Hope you got better. I asked my doctor about AA for a friend of mine. Really. Years later, the doctor still asks me how I'm doing with my sobriety. I've stopped trying to convince him I was really asking for a friend. Wow, good thing you don't live in Norway. Apparently, they will revoke your driver's license the second they suspect you may have issues with drinking. I would just like to specify that I don't have personal experience with this and don't know for sure. I just recall seeing a post on our Norwegian subreddit about a guy who was depressed and suicidal, who had gotten drunk once several days before seeing his doctor about getting help, who then had his license revoked. There were also several people in the comments saying they had a similar experience. ER Doc had a guy who just got out of jail a few days earlier, came in with his girlfriend who had just signed in for a STD check. Walk in to meet them and he says casually, "Is it possible to get gonorrhea in your throat?" At that moment, I knew he had gonorrhea in his throat. Who goes to the ER for an STD check? That's hardly an emergency. People without insurance or with Medicaid. It's literally how they get their medical care in the US. Lady walks in and goes, "So if you cheated and got pregnant, but then had sex with your husband, would the baby become his?" It took everything in me not to laugh. Potentially interesting note. It has happened where a woman gave birth to the children of 2 different men at the same time. The younger child usually had to go to ICU though. IRC, there have only been 2 recorded cases in the first world countries that had good documentation, so it could happen more often. It just might not be recorded properly. Not a doctor, but public health worker. Kinda NSFW. Had an older man come into our clinic asking for a specific type of STD check. Guy's ex-wife was going around telling rumors that he was having sex with his goats, so was wanting to know if there was any way we could do an STD test that could prove if he hadn't had sex with any goats. Through this whole conversation, he just abruptly asked, so if someone was having sex with a goat, what STDs could they get? That dude is totally his goats. Do you sleep with hot male patients? Asking for a friend. Kind of you to ask for a friend, since you obviously aren't asking for yourself. If the answer is yes, do you sleep with ugly male patients? Not a doctor, but pharmacist. Someone called the pharmacy one day, a young guy. I picked up. "Excuse me, how much does Viagra cost? Is there anything cheaper? I have someone that needs it." I explained everything and suddenly, "Will it work if I take it with alcohol?" The guy began asking for someone else. At the end was for him and was asking just because he wanted his little one to work while drunk. So does it work? Asking for a friend. It'll stay up, but you probably won't be able to finish. Also, don't take things that mess with your circulation blood pressure on top of alcohol. There are easier ways to have a really dumb night out. Not mine, but one of the older pharmacists I work with went out to help this 20-ish girl with some med questions. She then asked him about condoms and said, "If you were to do me, what condom would you use?" Yeah, he just walked away. Sometimes people just accidentally phrase the question wrong. He probably should have just given her a generic answer like, "Any name brand. You can't go wrong with Magnum, Durex, or Trojan." And then he could have still continued to not commit with her. My father is a doctor, and he got a call once in the middle of the night from his call share doctor's patient. The man asked what to do about a bump on his friend's arm that he scratched and something came out. He mentioned it was leaking a little oil now. It was a zit. He scratched a pimple. Woke the whole family up at 3 a.m. because he had to page my dad over a zit. This makes me annoyed because I have had to call doctors at 3 a.m. with lab results when they're bad, and I almost always get a huge attitude. I get no one likes to be woken up in the middle of the night, but I'm not the one making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be up at this hour to tell you your patient's blood is full of dead heart muscle. I briefly dated a doctor, and she told me a few hilarious stories. 1. If my friend masturbated with someone else's vibrator, will she get an STD? 2. Can wearing a butt plug all day give you diarrhea? 3. If you have an ulcer and swallow a guy's cum, can you get pregnant? 2 out of these 3 seems like somewhat legitimate questions. Not a doctor, but I was an intern. I was in the OPD and this man from a different province came in and told me his friend had injected petroleum jelly in their member years ago and that now it's getting painful. Yeah, he came back the next day and showed his lumpy member. This is a common thing apparently. Saw a patient who did the same. Had to have his penis reconstructed. He told everyone it was worth it. Eye doctor here. Finally closed our offices to all but emergency care. Last year or so, I had a staff member asking me for a friend if she got shot in the eye with cum and is now getting mild discharge, is that okay? I looked at her eye and saw discharge. Went to the cabinet, gave a bottle of antibiotic to her for her friend, and then went back to my patients. 2 days later, I look at her and say, "Your eye is looking much better today." She says, "Thanks, the discharge stopped a day and a half after using the drops." So her eye was pregnant, right? Unlikely, but she can no longer see women with that eye. She can only see semen. Not a doctor, but I used to work next to AA Pharmacy, and my boss, a 55-year-old man, asked me to go buy him some condoms for his nephew. Alcoholics Anonymous Pharmacy. Studies have been done about the effects of THC on glaucoma. When I worked for a glaucoma specialist, we had a hippie-type person come in with their family member for a new patient eval and asked the doctor to sign paperwork okaying a medical marijuana script for the patient's glaucoma. Problem was the patient was totally fine, didn't find any signs of the disease, and his eye pressure was within normal limits, and the doctor did not appreciate having someone try to trick him. To piggyback off this, and because I'm tired of the questions, marijuana only lowers your eye pressure for max 4 hours. To have sustained effects, you need to hit the blunt 6 times a day and nearly 2,200 times a year. Take the damn eye drops. Another family medicine doc called an ER doc yesterday on the cell phone asking what to do when you got soap in your eyes. Choose wisely, folks. I mean, it says so on the bottle. In case of contact with eyes, rinse thoroughly and contact a medical professional. Better safe than sorry. One of my besties called me late at night after his B-Day party. He said someone who was staying the night wanted to have sex with his girlfriend. They were drunk and a little uncoordinated, and somehow the frenulum, the little string thingy at the tip of the penis, ripped, and it won't stop bleeding. I gave his friend some general advice on stopping the bleeding and recommended a trip to the ER. The next day, he asked me if I had any recommendations for urologists for his friend because he needs minor surgery on his pee-pee. I told him to cut the nonsense, and in response, he sent me a pic of his injured penis. So long story short, his wang got a remodeling, and he is still with this vagina dentata sporting women. I liked that the friend was having sex with his girlfriend, and he was still supportive enough to ask advice for the friend. There is one dream where in my dream, I'm Spider-Man, but I'm losing my powers. I'm climbing a wall, but I keep falling. In my dream, actually, it's not even my dream, it's a friend of mine's dream. You know, I'm something of a doctor myself. Doctors are all busy at the moment, and I was sure the top comment was going to start with, not a doctor, but I saw this dude say to a doctor, "Can 2 white people have a black child?" Asking for a friend. The man's wife had an affair. The dude had the baby in the stroller, and when he was walking out, he looked like he was going to yeet the child, and I was secretly dying inside. That's rough. He must have had so many emotions running through his head. I wonder if the guy ever suspected anything before his wife gave birth. Yes, hi, this is Dr. X. I need to call in a prescription for hydroxychloroquine. Do you have any in stock? Asking for a friend. I have lupus, and while I no longer take Plaquenil for a couple of reasons, reading about how doctors are writing themselves and their families' prescriptions makes my blood boil. There are a lot of people who legitimately need it for autoimmune issues, and they can't get it right now. We're already at higher risk for COVID, now we have to try not to catch anything while flaring. Divorced women, cougars, like to explain muscle strains as sex injuries to get a rise out of docs. Best way to deal is to stay monotone and not react. Patient describes proximal abductor muscle pain in the hip flexion during recreational activity. Rated 7 out of 10. Pain is now present during ambulation. If you don't react, they move along. Doesn't take long in the office to have seen and/or heard everything. I'm not interested that you are recently divorced, started working out, and discovered Tinder. Good on you, but it takes more to get a rise out of me. One colleague in training had a professional cuddler with a similar injury. Doc was very conservative, possibly on the sheltered side, and in front of two of his superiors during the case, and she was not shy. I would add she was not visually what I assume most would hope for in a professional cuddler either. That one I enjoyed on account of him, not her. AskReddit. What do you like about your life? The woman I bought my house from was an amazing gardener and created this lovely cottage garden full of window pathways and benches and flowers. She's so ace. She still always responds when I WhatsApp her to check what something is or ask advice even though I've lived here for years. It's a nice little side pocket of my life that's remained pleasant. I hope whoever gets my house appreciates the garden. A house across the street used to have a really nice garden, which the next owner ripped out and replaced with lawn, which the next one ripped out to replace with a sad garden, which the latest ripped out and replaced with grass again. Wish I had taken pictures. I'm still able-bodied. I think about this a lot and try to appreciate it. I grew up unathletic and chubby. In the past couple of years, I've taken better care of my body, and the difference is wild. If I want to do something like climb a tree or run or learn a dance, I can. Just do it. I'm realizing that my happiest self is just a primate. Somebody who sleeps enough, eats good food, and has reason to move their body that aren't just, I must work out so I can lose weight, actually being able to enjoy everything my body can do. Sometimes I think about how tenuous it can be. Injury, illness, old age, any of those can take a lot of this away from me. By the way you phrased your answer, it sounds like you've got that perspective too. So I'm grateful for my able body. Thank you for reminding me to be. With all that sheltering at home, I'm really glad I have a backyard I can hang out in to help with my cabin fever. I envy you for having a backyard. I wish you a good time there. You deserve it. Do you do any gardening? I know I would if I had a yard. Not a lot of time to do gardening, but I have a tiny pear tree that I have been watering for a year or so. At this rate, it'll bear fruit when the sun explodes. This might be a bit more esoteric and trivial than other responses, but I went out walking in my neighborhood this afternoon wearing a brown and white hoodie. This 8 to 10-year-old kid, I suck at guessing ages, came skateboarding by and yelled out, "You look like a porg!" So I just did the porg screeching thing from The Last Jedi, and the kid started laughing so hard that he fell off his skateboard and landed straight on his ass. That was pretty cool. Highlight of my life this week. Top-notch response there. Pizza rolls. Had those last night. Sounds like you had a good night. Having a bed, food, and the most loving family. Tell me more of this loving family. I've only heard of them in books as a child. We have a virus that makes us stay at home, but we have the internet, so we don't feel alone. Yes, Friday night we had a group video chat, and it was so much fun. We realized how lucky we are this is happening today, and not even 10 years ago. I've never been happier to work for the government than I am right now. My job is in no immediate danger. This is honestly the first time my in-laws have stopped complaining about my husband's job. Previously complaints. It doesn't pay enough. He's not using his degree to its potential. He should move back to his hometown. But now, he's an essential worker. TLDR, my current melancholy. See, my son just turned 18 in the middle of this quarantine. He graduates high school next month, There will probably be no graduation, no prom, no parties with friends. He is expecting to go to college a couple thousand miles away in the fall, if college still happens in the fall. All with coronavirus hanging over everything, it is profoundly all a great deal of sadness. But I am still so excited for him. He has grown up to be such an amazing, interesting person. He has a deep empathy for others, a strong will, a great sense of humor, and a hard-working attitude. He is really poised to be the type of young man that I would be proud to know, even if he wasn't my son. So I am melancholy, but it really is okay. It's life. It's nice to have such feelings. It means there is something that has meaning in my life. That's all we can really hope for, isn't it? Quit smoking 6 months ago and haven't drank in 20 days. Realizing both do absolutely nothing for you. Also having a stable job and paid off house. My wife is okay too. You're doing it, friend. You're putting in the work, putting in the time. Good job. I'm not rich, but I am wealthy enough to not really care about much. I have everything I need and I don't have any wants at this time. So I live what many would consider to be carefree. I don't have to stress over anything, which is nice. Exactly how I explain to people what I want. I don't need to have billions, just enough so that I can own a house and not worry about financial pressures. Being able to go out and eat without having to think about it and set a budget. Being able to go around the world with my wife to be. Being able to afford a wedding. I'm happy for you. My older brother, who is honestly probably my best friend. He stood up for me through the years, helped me get back on my feet even when I don't always do my best. And whenever I get into a new hobby or interest, he's the type of person that will sit and listen for hours. He'll even participate in crazy experiments with me. Like one month, we drove to different stores to buy any off-brand pencils we could find. We'd then come home and try the pencils out for a few days to figure out which brand was the best writing pencil. Another time, we spent a month eating different types of apples and compared the tastes. I get into a lot of odd, bizarre projects. Right now, I'm into watercolor painting, which is pretty awesome, and he's still happy to hear me talk about painting techniques. We've even talked about trying to make our own paper and the whole process that goes into doing so. He's seriously the best. The peace amidst the chaos. I live alone. There are no annoying children in my fourplex. The neighbors are not overly loud or rude at all. In fact, they're very nice. Preach. What a great time to not have children. I love kids, but my boss has a toddler, and from our video chats and attempt at video training, I am so glad that I currently do not. I'm a young divorced mother of two who still went to college and is pursuing the career I've wanted since the 8th grade. I like that I didn't just give up and let myself become a statistic. I also really like my best friend and my boyfriend. I have a fantastic support system in these people. Wish you the best. I have been putting my college on hold due to some external factors, but I am also determined on going back to, as well as no matter how long it takes. You are never too late for education. A lot, but most specifically my mom is the best. She has given up a lot of herself and denied herself from having many things for the sake of my sister and myself, and often just so that little baby me could have what I wanted. Not only what I needed, but a lot of what I wanted. Not only did she, and still does, often sacrifice being able to get things for herself that she would like to have, so she could instead give something to me or my sister, but has never failed to be there for us however she's needed, regardless of what she is going through. She has always made us feel loved. Although she will never believe me no matter how many times I tell her, she is the best. What I like about my life is that my mom is my mom. In fact, I love this about my life. Despite feeling lonely, I like that I have my own home to live in every day. I'm just glad I bought last year instead of a month ago, because my savings were pretty sparse back then, and this whole pandemic is making it feel like I might lose my job. We bought a house at the end of last year when, in our planning stages, we weren't planning on buying a house until around May or June. I am so happy I am spending this time in a house of my own instead of either of the places we were renting from. We also kind of stretched our budget because the house we bought was one we fell in love with because of the backyard. We've got a small forest area with a bonfire. Things are stressful right now, but I'm there with you. We accidentally had great timing in buying a house. I'm 6 weeks sober as of today after 18 years of alcohol abuse. Everything in life has gotten better. Work, wife, hobbies, depression. It's a joy just to be alive. Even this quarantine hasn't gotten me down. That's amazing. Congratulations. Thank you. It's been tough, but feeling amazing. Reddit/stop drinking really helped me out. I have my dog, a roof over my head, and enough food. Dogs are essential workers. They just work from home. I agree 100%. I like this community very much. Reading the comments are so very wholesome. Right now it's raining in California. We don't get much rain, so this is such a good feeling. The town is being cleaned, plants and trees getting water, me drying off my 2 dogs after they play in the rain. All is good despite the virus and frustrations. I have a 15-month-old son who I put to sleep every night. I sit with him in his room right before I put him in his crib. I make up songs and sing to him as he lays on my chest. He looks at me and smiles ear to ear. Now he's starting to mimic some sounds and notes that I sing. It is the purest form of happiness I've ever experienced. And it's available every single night. I have an 18-month-old. He sleeps through the night and settles himself. Sometimes he cries out, I go in and pick him up. His head goes right down onto my shoulder and I rock him gently. After a few minutes, he turns and reaches out for his crib and goes back down to sleep for the night. Knowing he just wanted to be held by me for a quiet moment and being there for that brings a euphoric calm I've never felt anywhere else. I've actually got a girlfriend now. I'm still not quite sure how, but I'm very excited. I wish I had a boyfriend. Normally this would be the point where I offer myself, but I'm currently taken. I'm sure you will be too in time. I teach high school and my students love me almost as much as I love them. 14 years into my career, I'm now at a point where my earliest students are just hitting their strides as adults, and I get to watch them prosper and know that I played a small, sometimes not too small, role in their success, because many specifically told me. There's a lot of nonsense that comes with the profession, but there's also a lot of nonsense teachers out there who may know their subject well, but don't know things about connecting with the students in their charge. I wish more teachers understood that. I am taking a regular English class as someone who is usually in honors classes, and the teacher for it is my favorite ever. He cares so much about the students and connects on a professional and emotional level with his students. Mr. Lovegren, if you are reading this, you are awesome. Not gonna lie, my life is turning out pretty great. Got a job I love, moved into a new apartment with my girlfriend. I'm paying for her studies. I'm also planning on popping the question soon. Wish me luck. Let's go. Good luck with it, stranger. AskReddit. What's your favorite subreddit to binge read? HFY is currently experiencing the rise of a legend. One man has put out over 120 chapters, sometimes 2 or 3 a day. He has built an amazing universe and continues to do so at breakneck speed. I highly recommend checking it out if you are into sci-fi or general humanity, yeah. I couldn't help but notice your name. Life Before Death? Journey Before Destination. Radiant. Death. I'm a closed captioner, and it's very useful to get a glimpse into the community that I've never worked hard enough to be able to truly communicate with, even though I like to think I provided them with an essential service. I want to start learning ASL too. I know a tad, and being able to communicate with deaf or hard of hearing in public sometimes brightens them right up. Smiles for days, especially the older people. You don't only help deaf people. My hearing's fine, but I can't understand half of what's being said in films or TV without subs, especially if I'm eating chips. Tomorrow on BuzzFeed, top 10 subreddits to binge while in quarantine. Wow, for real? I've noticed that. For time to time, they will make an article based on what's trending on AskReddit. And they always say, we asked people on Reddit. As if every AskReddit question was posted by a BuzzFeed bot. Idiots in cars. I just watch things. I love this sub. I've lost hours scrolling through it. Ask Historians. Such a good subreddit. I love that sub too. The deleted answers can be frustrating to see, but the strict moderation is why the answers are such high quality. Ask History doesn't have near the same level of moderation, which makes it more fun but also less reliable. I love reading posts in personal finance. Some posts are useful, but many of them are things like, I just got my $500 tax return. I have no emergency fund. Should I use my tax return to donate to my church or pay my bills? No way. Way more of them are 25M and just inherited 1.1 million from my grandma. I've worked hard my whole life. Should I put this in stocks and live off residuals, or should I buy a big house? I swear half of them are just humble brags. Am I the a-hole? Filtered to a-hole votings. It's amazing how idiotic and narcissistic people can be and not know it. One of my favorites is definitely the one where the dude just can't control his eating problems and ends up eating like 75% of a giant sub meant for a party. Definitely Amish. Actually, I'm kind of surprised there's not a sub for young Amish going through Rumspringa. I mean, there's a sub for literally every other tiny niche community. Legal advice. I have no idea why. I'm not a lawyer and have never been sued or had to sue anyone. I just like reading it. I love the ones involving trees. All I've learned from lurking is I really love tree law and never cut down someone else's tree. D&D green text. So many different things happen in people's campaigns that I'm always guaranteed something good if I head over there. Unsent letters. I have to be in the right mood, but I can waste hours in this one. Scenes from a hat. If the subject's good, the replies are bound to be better. I don't work here, lady. If you're in the mood for some crazy. I do work here, lady. If you're in the mood for the exact opposite kind of crazy. Pro-revenge. So supremely satisfying to read about people getting their comeuppance. Petty revenge if I'm not in a super sadistic disposition. Tumblr and 4chan. I have, in the past, browsed one right after the other to get to a true scope for what the internet can bring in the form of entertainment. AskReddit. Well, duh. Relationship advice. I'm not sure why it's my dirty pleasure, but I feel like after reading all the trash people go through and the comments that I can spot red flags in people from a mile away now. Most people, when you look through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Relationship advice. Everything is flags all the time and all of them are red. Everything is red and flags. Besides AskReddit, when I want long stories, I'll go to Reddit serials. Short ones, I'll check out HFY. When I want to binge art, I'll go to Imaginary Leviathans and Reasonable Fantasy. TIFU also has a ton of creative fiction on there too. Botched surgeries and Instagram versus reality, because I'm insecure. Suffered from eating disorders, and looking at those subreddits helps motivate me to keep working out, plus eating healthily to achieve a healthy and realistic physique. How does Instagram versus reality and Instagram reality differ? This is the first time I've seen versus reality. Not the Onion news articles that you'd think are from the Onion, but are actually real. There's some absolutely mind-boggling stuff in there. 8 the Onion. People believing the most outrageous Onion-type articles and commenting on them as if they're true. Freaking hilarious. Unpopular Onion. Sorted by controversial. You really get an insight into the depths of the human psyche. In a perfect world, sorting by controversial on that sub, you should just end up seeing loads of popular opinions, but oh well. That's the irony of the sub. If your post makes it to the top, it's not all that unpopular. No sleep. That subreddit made me feel like such a moron. Read the whole staircase series of posts and was losing my mind because everyone in the comments were discussing it like it was true. So I was like, oh no, this is actually real? I finally looked at the subreddit rules after reading them all. I was like, oh, I'm just an idiot. Power washing porn. Somehow better than oddly satisfying. Ha! Same. Every time I visit that sub, I think to myself, why do I enjoy this so much? Spicy. Salsa snobs. Hot sauce recipes. Hot sauce. Mexican food. Tacos. Just joined your whole list. Thanks. Cozy places. Landscaping. Room porn. Plus all the subs it links. Amateur room porn. Man cave. Woodworking. And then the dozens of animal subs. Thank you. I guess I never thought to look for landscaping. I only really found new subs linked off other subs. RPGH horror stories. For geeks that feel bad about themselves, seeing that asshats they talk about there makes you think, wow, at least I'm not that guy. It's amazing how many of them are basically about sexual assaulting people, often a player character, in a game. Like, of course most people don't appreciate that. That should just be common sense. Apparently not, since a YouTube dungeon master just got in big trouble for doing that. Came out with an apology on Twitter of, oops, my bad. Let's not meet, and serial killers. Sometimes it's nice to read about ourselves on the internet. Am I the only one that this thread is a goldmine to? I mainly use Reddit to read before bed, and boy oh boy do I have some material now. Thank you everyone. Well, if you look at any AskReddit about the most toxic subs, I'd say 75% of these are usually among the top replies. Be careful out there. Nah, you're not alone. This is Reddit crack for me. Been joining awesome subs and upvoting like my life depends on it. Anti-MLM. Just discovered it recently and can't stop reading it. I'm high right now and really appreciate this post. Love binge reading interesting things while stoned. The problem is the first suggestion was unresolved mysteries for me, and that ended in a spooky high, lol. I did it to myself, I know. Some of my favorites. Line of Norman, a subreddit about writing small fictional tales about a fictional character named Norman, a rather unremarkable fellow. Unresolved mysteries, one of my favorite subs about mysterious cases that have yet to be solved. AMA disasters, a sort of museum for AMAs that have gone totally wrong. Depth Hub, a bit like Best Of for really in-depth discussion. Reddit writes Seinfeld, a fun little sub where people write scenes from Seinfeld based on prompts. The Gritty Past, a great little subreddit about accounts from history not often talked about because of their tragic and often violent nature. History Antidotes, pretty much speaks for itself, mostly content from the creator of the sub, who also does TGP, but others contribute too. Fan Theories, a great sub full of some pretty great theories about movies, shows, and books. Tales from Tech Support, maybe. Like many things, it ain't what it used to be. Take a look through their top of all time, and there are some really great serial stories. The one with the young Euro woman working a shady tech shop run by real-life creeps is amazing. Right now, the trend is WFH non-stories, as opposed to the usual non-stories. It says right in the rules the tale should be interesting. Sorry, the fact that you reset someone's password is not interesting. Wanting to contribute and having something worthy of sharing don't often align. There are a few things I would like to see banned, such as any comment about the keyboards or any reference to the IT crowd. But there's reason people make them. Just my personal preference, because the keyboards will never be resolved. Everyone got played by a tease, and the IT crowd is super overrated. Writing prompts is fantastic. Sometimes they have short series, and other times it can be basically a small novel, but extremely talented writers on that sub. I'd like writing prompts a lot better if it was just the same overused prompts on a loop every 2 weeks. I had to leave the sub after a while, if only because I was so tired of seeing the same 10 prompts on my feed. Locked Away by Omega Weapon is a collection of his experiences with choosing beggars and general butthole customers. As a bartender, I live vicariously through this business owner and his wonderfully witty smackdowns. 10 out of 10. It's turned into a dark depression rant recently, just a warning, but thanks my dude. Hobby drama is great. as is Unresolved Mysteries, and its smaller cousin, Non-Murder Mysteries. I'd probably binge read comic strip history if it weren't for the fact that most of the posts on that sub are from me. Don't forget pictures of Ian sleeping. RBI, Reddit Bureau of Investigation. Redditors trying to solve real-life mysteries. Surely there's no way this could go awry. AskReddit. What is one memory that never fails to make you smile every time you think about it? My mom found out she had stage 4 lung cancer when I was 2 and passed away when I was 6. When she got diagnosed, she was given 6 months to live, so, needless to say, she gave us lots of amazing memories and really lived in the moment. The one story I always tell when talking about my mom was how one day she let me and my older sister stay home, which was a big deal in 1st and 3rd grade already. We went to Bulk Barn and got every item we wanted. When we got home, we snuggled in my parents' bed, spread out, and what felt like a never-ending amount of bags of chocolate candy, and watched Disney movies all afternoon. When my dad came home from work, he just jumped right in and joined us. It was right before she went into hospice, and the last good day I remember her having before she passed, so the memory holds a special place in my heart. About a year ago, I was in a discount grocery store. I had about $20 left after bills and rent, so was having to carefully pick what to buy. In the end, after umming and ahhing for a couple of minutes over whether I could afford to spend $6 on coffee, I put it back on the shelf and went to the register. As I'm walking out of the shop, I hear a woman call after me, "Young man, you forgot this." I turn around and she thrusts the jar of coffee into my bag. I go to protest and she cuts me off saying, "I remember what it was like, not having enough money and having to go without. You take that coffee and enjoy it, mate." The biggest smile on her face. She was like a beacon of light during one of my darkest times, and I always remember her. With every cup of coffee, I can't help but smile. Because now each cup reminds me that there are truly good people in the world. Never thought much of Reddit karma, but am surprised, and very appreciative, to have gotten 8,000 upvotes and gold for this story, but more so for seeing how people have responded. I am glad my story has cheered and helped so many of you. I dedicate this, by far my highest voted post, to Margaret. If by some chance you're reading this, thank you again for the coffee, and I hope you are well. I've paid forward your kind deed several times since then, and hope in some way it has circled back to you. I sometimes wonder if you know just how much impact you made on me and my outlook on life that day. Also fix spelling. Always remember there are good and kind people out there. Don't let a few bad apples ruin humanity for you. For years I did, and I've only recently learnt this lesson. If you take anything away from this post, let it be that. Bike tours with Grandpa. He sure was the sun. I'm waiting for Grandpa to come and say, "Here comes the sun." Do. Mine was too. I only ever wanted a fishing rod as a young girl, and no pink or girl-colored ones were made back then. My grandpa found the least brown one and gave it to me for my 12th birthday, and we went fishing that very morning. Redid my boat license recently after moving interstate, and had my male cousins tell me how proud he would have been, as were they. My daughter was born in July. The following fall, she often would cry at night. I would wrap her in a blanket and take her for a walk. Moments after we got into the cool fall air, she would fall asleep, but I would make the walk last as long as I could. Now every fall when the first cool evening hits, I smile and often take a walk. Kind of similar experience with me. My daughter would often suffer from colic as a baby, and despite the meds, most times she would keep on wailing. Once I discovered that she would immediately calm down if I lay her down with her in my arms in the empty bathtub, it became a ritual. We don't have a house with a bathtub now, and my baby's grown too. But whenever I see a picture of a cozy bathtub, I cannot help but smile, remembering the sense of comfort she felt. The thought of our children sleeping without pain or worry are very precious to a parent. P.S. My daughter was born in July as well. When my friend got hit in the face with a piece of broccoli at a hibachi restaurant. This made me remember that for my birthday one year, I went to a restaurant called Au Noir in Montreal with my sister and some friends. The wait staff is people who are blind, and you eat in the dark. My sister managed to throw a mushroom at me and hit me right in the middle of my forehead. Of course, I threw one back, but in the dark I missed and could not tell where it went. About 5 minutes later, we just hear, "There's something slimy on my chair," from someone who had just been seated. We about died laughing. Also, being sung happy birthday in complete darkness takes all the awkwardness out of it. No one's staring at you, and you don't have to look at anyone or anything. My favorite childhood memory is, always will be, sitting at the kitchen table having a coffee with my mom. We would just sit and talk for hours about everything over a pot of coffee. Truthfully, every time I have a coffee, I think of those times and smile. That probably contributes to my caffeine addiction. I need a coffee to get through my day has totally different meaning for me. That joyful thought always rights whatever wrong is going on. She lives several states away now and is getting older. I don't know how many coffee talks we have left, but I'll always have the ones we've already had. You can always start a tradition of phone and coffee pots. Both make coffee and sit and talk. I know it isn't the same, but sometimes making that time to just talk and ramble makes all the difference. Any memory with my grandpa? Well, he technically isn't my real grandpa, but he's who I grew up with my whole life. The man was hardworking, loving, funny, and every positive aspect you'd ever want in a grandpa. But there's one memory that stands out. 6 years ago, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, and Alzheimer's. They weren't diagnosed together, but he took these diseases to the grave. It was too much for him to be awake during all of it, so they medically induced a coma that he never woke up from. Throughout all of it, he never moved a muscle. The quiet sounds of his breathing were all we heard. At one point, my sister was by his side in tears like the rest of us. Out of nowhere, he reached up with his arm and gave my sister a hug. No one else got any actions from him, not even my grandma. It's a memory none of us will forget, especially not my sister. He died on March 4th, 2014, and our family gets together for ice cream on that date, along with his birthday to celebrate his life. He didn't deserve the pain he went through one bit, but I have no doubt that his loved ones greeted him with a smile when it was all over. I love you, Grandpa. I got to spend an entire week staying with my grandmother once when I was a child. That week was the best since I love my grandmother. We would scrapbook, sew, bake cookies, and do puzzles together. I was so happy to be able to spend time with her like that. She was my favorite person in the world. I loved my grandmother so much that when I was a little kid, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a grandmother. She's no longer alive, so I'm relearning how to sew during the quarantine, and I'm going to make a quilt with some of her old quilt blocks. I can relate so much to this. I had a pretty lonely childhood. No siblings, no kids my age lived nearby. The few friends that I had all lived a couple of miles away. Parents worked full time, and so I usually had to keep myself entertained. Sporadically, I used to spend the night at Grandma's place whenever my parents had to go to some place late at night, and I always loved it because she was always up to do things together with me, so I didn't have to keep myself entertained. Then at some point, I heard that my cousins stayed an entire week at their grandparents' place just for fun. This may sound weird, but up until that point, I didn't know that that was a thing that other kids sometimes did. So of course I wanted to do that as well, and so I did. It was just so much fun, and later I did it again a few times. I did arts and crafts, story time, etc. as a volunteer at the Children's Hospital. Definitely when my favorite kid found a bone marrow donor. They have a large golden bell at the front of the ward that kids ring when they finish chemotherapy. She hadn't finished yet, but she just went up to the bell and karate chopped it. I drunkenly signed up as a bone marrow donor last night. I secretly really hope it works out, and I actually help someone. One of the better drunk decisions. Nice, man. The first time my daughter spoke an intelligible word. She woke up in the morning and looking at me said, "Papa." The funny part is that my wife had, according to her, the perfect plan. She would say repeatedly to the baby the word "Papa." Then supposedly when the baby would need anything, she would call me and not my wife. It worked until a certain point. Now she's jealous that the first word was Papa, but when the baby wants something, she calls for her mommy most of the times. I did the same with our first, secretly repeated da 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 to him every chance I got. Seeing the happiness light up on my husband when the first word out of his beloved son's mouth was his name was absolutely worth it. My mom would sing and dance in the kitchen every Sunday morning when I was growing up. Times were always tough and money was always tight, but my mom always made sure we were happy and healthy. One particular day when I was 8, I was woken up by the sound of Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, blasting through the house and my mom singing off key. As I walked to the kitchen, the smell of chorizo and eggs filled the air, and there I saw her. My mom, who only a few days earlier looked so miserable with her life, was dancing her heart out with a spatula in her hand. When she passed away 7 years later, I cried every time I thought of her, except for this memory. This is the only memory that got me through her death. It not only makes me smile every time I think of it, but it's my favorite memory of all time because I'm so lucky to remember her for who she was. The last afternoon I spent with my grandma. She was such a firecracker, always joking around and giving people the bird. We had a great time, just the two of us. She passed away in September 2019, about 2 months after her husband. I miss them both, but thinking about that last afternoon with her always makes me smile. That sounds so nice. My grandma passed away Tuesday, and I was unable to go tell her bye or anything because of the virus. It made the funeral very frustrating not being able to go. One time, my brother said something funny while I was eating cereal, and I had a huge mouthful of unchewed mini-wheats and milk, and I started to laugh, but then my sister said something funnier, and then I thought of the most epic funny thing to say, but I was trapped in the state of laughter, trying not to spit out or choke on my food, which actually made me laugh even harder because of the situation I was in. Then my brother looks at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And I just point at him, and then my sister, and then myself, and it was so stupid, and I just fell to the floor crying with laughter. I can almost see you crying and rolling around, still crunching. Made me chuckle. Thanks. My first time coming home from college. I was worried my dog would forget me while I was gone, but when I walked through the door, she lost her mind. I've never felt so loved and relieved. Dogs never forget. AskReddit. If a premium version of Sleep were to exist, what features would it include? Snore mute button, anti-puke setting on old dog, siren blocker, auto cool side of pillow flipper. I need to know what happened here. Waking up ache-free, automatic bad sleeping position preventative. A hangover cure option would also be handy. Stay hydrated. Instant sleep. Go to sleep as soon as you please, with added wide awake and refreshed feature when you wake up. My partner says, "I'm going to take a nap," and literally falls asleep in under 2 minutes. Wakes up 45 minutes later and ready to go, not even realizing how fortunate it is that I am a pacifist. Download your dreams as video files. Remember that time you dreamt you had sex with your crush? Remember that dream where you have one more exam before you can pass college and you're trying to get to campus to write the test, but things just keep getting in your way and preventing you from getting to school? It's the same, but the non-premium sleep now has ads telling you how annoying those same ads are. Your crush is hitting on you. You start kissing. You go into a room. You take your shirt off. Your crush starts taking her shirt off. Tired of ads in your sleep? Tired of interruptions in your sleep? For only $19.99, you get to enjoy a full sleep as free. You now know you're dreaming. Your crush turns into Steve Harvey. You're screaming. A premium version of sleep? That's death, I believe. Sleep is just death being shy. Some poet because words. 1. No waiting period. Sleep instantly. 2. Full control of time. Sleep cycles. Waking up. 3. Control of dreams. 4. Administrative dashboard to tweak settings, i.e. REM versus non-REM percentage. Add in faster sleep. You need less time for the same amount of benefit, and I'd buy that for $4.99. You get to go to the bathroom and fall back asleep instantly. Why not just, you don't need to go to the bathroom during the night and skip that whole mess? Am I the only person who never has to get up to go to the bathroom during the night? I can't believe this hasn't been suggested yet. Wake up with fresh breath, especially helpful for people who share the same bed. With complimentary breath mints too. It does exist. Those people who can take a nap anywhere and people who can fall asleep within 5 minutes. Was always so jealous of those in school who could just knock off for a bit when they were bored. I've always sucked at sleep. I could sleep anywhere in my teenage years, needed about 3 minutes and I was zonked. Over a decade later, it takes me an hour and several random sleep starts before I can nod off. I hate aging. Actually feeling like you slept the next morning. I would literally murder any of you to experience this. I'd apologize first. Unfortunately, I have no trouble falling asleep, and all the tests say there's more or less nothing wrong with me. I just wake up exhausted after 6, 8, or 12 hours of sleep, and have every single day of my life since at least 13, 16 years ago. At this point, the doctors just blame depression. They may be right, but no drugs help in particular either. I've had 2 sleep studies, 2 MRIs looking for various kinds of glandular problem, and countless blood tests. Frankly, I've given up hope. Multiplayer. I scrolled too low for this. The options to turn on and off the morning wood function. I like that I have an option. Awesome question. I have for a long time thought about a sleep Olympics. Admittedly, this makes everyone I tell it to think of me as slightly off. But some events I have thought about are how quickly one falls asleep. What max decibel disturbance level can one fall asleep and stay asleep in? How quickly to go to REM and deep sleep. Some kind of metabolic psychological test which measures how well the body has recovered, replenishes itself. The competition idea is to help bring forth quantum improvements in sleep. As you can imagine, I am an insomniac. Sleep faster to ease the grind. Dreams come with more built-in control and ad-free. Now we know you gotta be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, but first a word from our sponsor. 1. You can continue your dream after waking up. 2. You select what to dream. 3. Sleep faster. 4. Dream with other people without premium. 5. You can select music. Number 1 is actually sleep paralysis and is pretty terrifying for a lot of people. No, I think they mean you can recommence your dream to the next night. Xanax, heated sheets, no shoulder pain, cold AC, no interruptions, a sound machine, water to drink nearby, lots of ultra soft down pillows, amen and amen. Unlimited sleep. You mean death? I mean, it's not an exception. 1. Personally experience your dreams. 2. Control your dreams. 3. Feeling refreshed. 4. Not having a migraine or back pain after a bad night. 1. Immediately fall asleep. 2. Full control of dreams. 3. Unlimited amount of time in dreams without affecting real life time. Full dive single player, here I come. Presses red button. God mode activates. Knocks self unconscious. You never have to wake up to pee. Wait, you're supposed to? From like 12 to probably 35, I never ever had to wake up to pee at night. I always slept straight through. I might have woken up to pee once or twice per year. Now, at 45, there have been nights where I've woken up every 2 hours to pee the entire night, so like 3 or 4 times that night. It sucks. I already have sleep apnea, so sleep already doesn't do much for me, and waking up every 2 hours doesn't help matters. Remembering your dreams. It is very easy to remember your dreams. You always have about 3 to 5 dreams, but you don't forget most a minute after you wake up. If you want, you can remember your dreams next morning. When you wake up, only think about your dreams, and all you have to do is try to remember even a single detail. Even a single detail of the dream can lead you to all 5 dreams. If you can't recall your dreams from the next night, write as many details as you can to your notebook, dream journal, and try next night. It doesn't work well if you don't sleep enough. Insta-sleep. No more waiting for half hour to sleep. Groggy lists rise. No more feeling bad in the morning. Day max. No more running out of energy in the middle of the day. 1. Having a perfectly comfortable sleeping position. Not a single part of your body being uncomfortable or stressed. 2. Your mind is completely clear. Whenever I sleep, I usually think of scary things in my mind. 3. No sleep paralysis. Only sleep 3 hours for 8 hours of sleep. Fall asleep instantly when you want to. Full control of dreams. Remove snoring sleep paralysis, etc. Nothing can wake you up unless you want to. While sleeping, you can no longer die. Option to skip sleep without feeling tired. While sleeping, any pain, injury, sickness, etc. will be healed. If you so choose, you can sleep back in time instead of forwards, can skip as much time as you would like. 30-day free trial that doesn't start charging you money after it's over. Record dreams as video. Remember all your dreams and you can instantly forget them if you want. $9.99 US a month. Guaranteed wet dreams. But you'd have to wash your pants every day, LOL. Oh, that's why I had to scroll this far to see wet dreams mentioned. As a woman, I think premium sleep should include all sex dreams actually end up in proper sex, and you're awake in seconds before finishing. It's hypothetical. Let's just add dry orgasms for men. Video files of my dreams. Ability to cure all aches and pains. Granted, your internet upload speed is now 1 Mbps, so it'll take ages to send your video to anyone. Lucid dreaming all of the time. I wouldn't say all the time, just when you wanted to. It would regenerate your body and keep it in some half comatose state and make it do all your assignments, because please help me. Regeneration? I don't want to go. Not having that weird thing that you feel like falling or missing a step and waking up almost having a heart attack. Dude, that's so annoying. I hate that thing. It comes like 1 every 2 weeks. Once I got 2 in a row. Horrible. Inception sleep. You sleep for 2 hours with goal being to reach lucid ASAP. In lucid state, instruct your body to sleep as long as it needs to be at peak restoration. Profit. No more accidentally crushing your nuts. I have nuts. I have never experienced this. Control your dreams. You can, but it's hard. 1. No random moments where you think you're falling and jerk awake. 2. No random cramps in your legs or feet. 3. No drooling. 4. Instant falling asleep and instant waking up at desired time. 5. Light around you doesn't affect you or wake you up. Crucial for those third shift workers. 6. No nightmares. 7. Sleep paralysis issue fixed. 8. No snoring or sleep apnea. 1. Birds chirping is no longer a problem. 2. Stress has been disabled at work. 3. Being in control of ring finger and pinky at wake instead of a 10-second cooldown. 4. Hot chalky milk ready nearby. What is 3? You must be young. Welcome to joint pain every morning and sometimes randomly throughout the day. For me, it's my air quote fingers, all 4 of them. Choosing certain things in your dream. You're always lucid dreaming. You can think of stuff and just do it in your dream. You don't wake up tired. When you're actually trying to fall asleep, your bed is comfortable as when you wake up. Never any nightmares. You would have to pay $4.99 a month. You'd think it would be more, right? Well, there's such a high command that it pays like being Mr. Beast's friend. AskReddit. Millionaires of Reddit. How did you become so wealthy? In my 20s, I was a computer programmer, just as the web started exploding in popularity. I could wire up websites and databases back when internet technologies were new, and tooling was still primitive. I never hit it big with a viral website like Facebook or Amazon, but I did charge a lot for programming services. And I used that money to buy houses at first, and ultimately an apartment building in coastal California. In my 40s now, I don't feel very wealthy really. Oddly, I still check prices when shopping, and I plan to drive my old Jeep until it dies. When I travel, I often pay to fly first class, and I do enjoy the nicer hotels, but other than that, I live and spend rather simply. Same here. Started at a late 90s era.com. We went public and I was suddenly worth 8 figures in my 20s. Cashed out before the crash. Always saved up a lot of money, 40% of my pay, and continually put it into stocks. Investment returns have outdone my savings for quite a while. How do you know which stocks to invest in? I've invested since I was 18. I have a degree in economics and deep interest in the markets. But honestly, I don't know anything. I have a diversified portfolio of 10 different stocks in different fields. Theory says that's too little, but I don't care. The different stock is all listed on the most traded index in my country. I come from Denmark, so it's the OMXC20 index. The thing is, stocks in general increase in value over time. Sure, some of my stocks are in red, but most are in black. Some drop 30%, others gain 40%. But year on year, my portfolio increases about the market average of 7%. That's including years of financial turmoil, financial crisis. In my opinion, the worst you can do with your money is to not invest it. Well, last year, my fiance's grandparents won a stupid amount of money in the lotto, double-digit millions. They were generous enough to share with the family. I grew up below the poverty line, so my life is nuts right now. I'm a girl for one. Two, I am in fact choosing to do stuff with my life, as not in an idle person mooching off a very lucky break. His money is placed in a trust and we have many financial advisors, and we are not cleared to buy anything without approval. And what we don't use is invested by the bank who runs the trust. I don't really care for advice since I'm just reaping the rewards. So far, we bought my fiance's childhood home his father built, which is in one of the most sought-after neighborhoods in my city, and we're loving the security we have as homeowners. We took an amazing trip in June where he proposed right on the banks of the River Ness in Inverness, Scotland. It was pretty magical, guys. And no, my ring is not exorbitant. Having the money hasn't changed us as a couple, as we spent a year and a half living in a bachelor suite the size of a one-car garage and still love each other. So at this point, it's a done deal. We're together for good, and we're getting married next. Also, I signed a cohabitation agreement, but we agreed that I am not signing a prenup. And my name will also be added to the title of the house after marriage. And the cohabitation agreement nullifies, making everything but the trust mine. So if in the highly unlikely case of divorce, I can go after him for half of everything but the trust, as it's owned by his grandparents. But he is beneficiary. Pretty nutty stuff, and I'm genuinely surprised they didn't force me into a prenup. I enlisted in the Army when I was 18. I liked it. I asked to become an officer, and they let me. The Army sent me to college, and I graduated. My officer pay was higher, and in the Army you don't have very many bills. I find I could save between 1 and 5,000 K every month of my life. After my second deployment, I was sitting on about 200 K. I hired a financial manager. He did well a few years. I've bought and rented a couple of houses. I've got 17 years in the Army, creeping closer to my portfolio worth $2 million and a good pension in retirement. I'm about to make lieutenant colonel. I'm in my late 30s. Just grind and save. I live in Eastern Europe. In 1990, I took out a huge loan and bought 10 apartments and furnished them. I rent them out to people, and with the money I earn from them, I pay off the loan payments. I do this every 10 years. I have now 30 apartments and 1 employee who I pay to maintain them and make sure payments and maintenance is handled. The key is finding good tenants and maintaining a good relationship with them. It is not that hard, but a key to this strategy. Huh? Goodreads. Continues to spend 97% of free time browsing internet and spending my extra $100 a month on fast food and video games. Honestly, it's not so bad living this way. I'm not a millionaire or even rich, and I don't have big dreams or ambition, but I'm so happy with my life. I go to work, study in college, and then chill at home with video games and free time. I used to run an apple cart in New York City, would buy an apple for 5 cents and sell it for 10 cents. Did this for 20 years. Then my wife's father died and left us a chain of hotels. This is the most entertaining response in the whole thread. Sorry to hear about your father-in-law, though. I sell overpriced consultancy time to CTOs who don't know any better. Well, I mean, technically you get a consultant in the first place because you don't know any better. Consultants are for due diligence. Shows insurance companies, investors, high-ups, and outsiders that you did your part to make sure everything is right. If it all goes to hell on the word of the consultant, it's not because you didn't know what you were doing. It's because your consultant messed up. Could mean the difference between getting fired and getting a second chance. Could also mean the liability of a lawsuit is no longer on you. Should have probably put a serious tag on, but whatever. Hope you get some advice worth thinking about. I used to read frugal blogs a few years ago when RSS readers were a thing. Some of them were more extreme than I cared about. I remember an article about making your own laundry soap, and another about one calculating how much they saved by using cloth rags to clean house versus using paper towels, including a breakdown of how much it cost to wash those rags, LOL. They seem to be more about making a game out of saving insignificant amounts of money than actually building wealth. But the point of them was to always be in the mindset of saving money. I guess to show you that usually isn't an overnight thing that you just stumble on. Now I have less time and I like to listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast whenever I'm on 30 to 45 minute or longer drives. I can't say that I live by his advice, but it's the mindset of always being ready to make smarter decisions financially that I'm aiming for. I'm not a millionaire by any means, but I'm in the best financial situation of my life, and it's getting better every day. I'll be there someday. I am on track of being a millionaire by just investing in my 401k. I started my career at 20 years old, right after graduating from college, and started investing the minimum to my 401k. Never really thought much of it until I did those calculators and realized that since I started so young, the compound interest on my investment account with a decent return would be huge. I would recommend you just put anything away. Everyone tells you to max your investments, but honestly, not everyone can invest $18,000 a year. Do the math of how much $200 a month will grow in 30 years. This might not be the exact answer, but this will easily get you to be a millionaire at some point. Please send me £1. When 1 million people have sent their pound, I will be able to answer this question. That is exactly it. Ask one person to give you £1 and he'll tell you to piss off. Ask 1 million people to give you £1 and you are much more likely to be successful. I actually hit it big at a casino a while back. Not enough where I can afford to quit my job and buy a mansion, but I'm comfy and so will my son be. $2 million in one night? What size bets were you making? Pretty substantial ones. Was in a dark place. Compounding interest is a hell of a drug. Save, save, save. Stuff that savings into Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. Forget about that money. It doesn't exist until you're ready to retire. Warren Buffett gave us the keys to the castle. Is this limited to America, or could I as a Canadian take advantage of this as well? I recently came into a modest amount of money from an insurance settlement and have been just sitting on it. I grew up poor, and although I'm currently comfortable, I still live below my means and am comfortably frugal, so it makes sense I should just invest it, but I have no clue where to start. Parents died. If you're gonna make a Batman joke, just know that you're not at all clever, original, or funny. It turns out you were always a millionaire. Not if they had large life insurance policies and no assets while living. Through hard work and perseverance, I established a reputation for honesty and competence. I was slowly promoted to increasing positions of responsibility and remuneration. I saved prodigiously and invested wisely. I married well to someone with similar values. Converted all of my money into Zimbabwe dollars. Brilliant, I just printed FYO bucks. It was hella easy. We have such an inflation problem, I'm worth several billion. Most people go Zimbabwean, but Vietnamese dong is a lot cheaper, about $50 to become a millionaire. Being frugal, not buying new cars, not caring about what others think. Saving and investing and doing it again. Not making knee-jerk investments. Letting them ride long-term and not freaking out at every market correction. For me, it was a slow game, but fun to watch it take off. The stock market is a tool for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. We got some advice here for the UK. Lots of 401k talk, which isn't all that useful over here. Save and invest. 401k is just a vehicle, albeit a nice tax-deferred vehicle, and has a maximum annual contribution of something like $18,000 anyway. I guess it sounds like ISA, but also has employer contributions. Not me, but my family. My dad was piss poor as a kid because he was one of 5 kids to a single mother since my grandpa died when dad was like 11 or 12. Moved out at 17 after getting his HSC, Aussie SATs, went to work, worked a lot. My dad's really smart, so he was good at what he did. Mom and dad weren't meant to be able to have kids, but when both of them were 40, they conceived me. Dad had just started his own business in the tech industry, but he believed in himself and the 2 mates he started the company with, and it boomed. Mom hasn't worked since I was born because she was taking care of me. When I went to school, she started doing a lot of charity work. She fell pregnant again with my little brother, but he was stillborn when I was 3 years old, so I stayed an only child. This year, both my parents turned 60, and my dad retired because of his business, and was doing so well. We live in a nice house, but most of our money goes to charity anyway, since Dad knows how it feels to have no money. What doesn't go to charity goes to family. I remember one year at Christmas, my dad gave his mom, my Nana, and all 4 of his siblings $10,000 each. $50,000 in 1 year. I never asked for money. I got a job legally as soon as I could, 14 and 9 months, and I've worked ever since while attending school. AskReddit. Should the USA place a fat tax on sugary drinks and junk food to combat obesity? Why or why not? Part 2. I think people should just take some personal responsibility, right? This is Reddit. People want complete government control, no responsibilities, complete socialism, and government programs from cradle to grave making every decision for you. Yes, because that's how we eradicated smoking, by making cigarettes more expensive. In general, I don't think it's the government's job to tell people what choices to make, but cigarettes are disgusting and terrible, and I'm glad they're eradicated. Although I do wish we didn't need the government to compensate for stupidity. Junk food is a tricker beast, though. There's a lot of gray area to it and a big slippery slope. I personally don't drink sugary drinks, and it kills me a little when I see a fat person drinking a soda, but that problem is much more complex than you can fix with a tax disincentive. Taxing a drink is absolutely not going to 1. Teach people to make good decisions, 2. Educate them about nutrition and exercise, or 3. Give them willpower to make good choices. It's just going to put more of a financial burden on them and perpetuate the spiral. Yeah, let's allow the feds the ability to tax more of our lives. They don't have enough F-35s to waste taxpayers' money on. No. People know how to avoid obesity, don't overdo it with junk food, and move around a little bit. Why should a fit person have to pay a bit more for a treat just because obese fat people eat it for every meal? Because kids are at the mercy of their dumb parents. The worst cases of obesity begin in childhood. Once you have set that hormone imbalance off by too much sugar, it's almost impossible to set it right again. We could just remove subsidies on corn syrup first, or the entire refined sugar industry while we're at it, or we could just tax the rich and leave people alone with their vices. It's not like people are trying to become obese. No, it's up to the people to decide to be healthy or not. The government shouldn't punish a company for what is clearly known. It's a free country where people have to pay for their own health care, isn't it? So what does it matter if people get fat? The poor don't pay for their own health care, though. Medicaid is paid for them. Being honest, I didn't know that. I'm not a U.S. resident, but I still believe that you can't police others' free choice of how they live their lives. I'm going to go with no. The U.S. government has more power than I like already. They can screw right off with new taxes. Hell no, this is a free country. Don't tell me what to eat. Attempting to adjust obesity levels via economic incentives is going to do nearly nothing to solve the issue. People are not obese because they cannot afford healthy food. Portion control alone would allow someone to maintain a reasonable weight even on a carb-based diet. The root cause is low self-control. If someone eats exclusively McDonald's because he or she is addicted to the flavor and portion size, then raising the cost via tax will only accomplish making the person bankrupt. The government has tried the same strategy to combat smoking with little success, and the same problem occurs. Addicts end up spending even more of their limited money on the object of their habits, leaving their dependents without food and the addict's addiction intact. The best way to combat obesity is likely individual treatment. Personal training, psychiatric help, and the aid of a dietitian are key. And ultimately, if the foregoing doesn't help, then surgery might be necessary. The low self-control that causes obesity is sometimes very innate, so it's impossible for some, even very rich and/or smart people, to adhere to a strict diet and exercise routine. No. First, I hate that the government thinks they know what is best for me. This cuts both ways politically. Second, it is a regressive tax. I can afford a tax on junk food and it won't change my buying habits. But someone poor already can't buy healthier food. Why make them pay more? This is just a way to bring in more tax revenue and make it sound good. Finally, it doesn't work. No, they should just make healthy food more affordable. There is nothing wrong with enjoying these snacks once in a while. You gotta live life a little sometimes. The problem is overconsumption, and people who aren't well off can't eat a healthy lifestyle. I think there should be a tax for trash and one-time use materials, not a fat tax. No, for the simple fact of, it's none of the government's business what I eat. They ought to at least stop subsidizing sugar, corn, etc. Then consider taxes on foods with more X grams of sugar or fat. Only if they put the same tax on everything else that isn't either a fruit, vegetable, or grain. Y'all actually think people are gonna mind paying the extra 5 cents for a soda? I live in Orlando and people pay $10 for a can of Coke with a smile on their face. Please no new taxes until a government is in place that will use that money wisely and responsibly, and not writing a check to family members with it. I think it's a bad idea because you're not at all fighting against the reason why fat people are fat, so the result would be fat people getting more poor. I'm not fat, I'm fit and athletic, but I love my candy and soda, so no, I shouldn't be taxed because others' lack of self-control. I'd rather we target the food industry than the consumers. Regulate what they're allowed to produce instead of punishing people who have been marketed to their whole lives to eat this way and in many cases are addicted. Capitalistic exploitation won't solve the issue of obesity, so no, the USA should not do this. To get to the root, we need news outlets and conscious media networks that highlight the ugly truth of poor eating habits. Absolutely not. It's not the job of the government to change the tax rate on products they do or don't like. If you're going to have a state sales tax, that's fine. It makes sense. But let the tax be the same for all goods and services. In my home state of Washington, the taxes are just nuts. 8.5% on most items, 37% on weed, 20.5% alcohol, 30% tobacco, and now they want to tax sugar as well? It never ends with these people, yet we still have a ton of financial waste. The sugar tax isn't about getting people healthier, it's about the money. If you want people to be healthier, encourage health. Encourage companies to reduce sugar content, but let people make their own decisions instead of forcing it through legislation. No, If people want to kill themselves with sugar, let them do it. I don't think it's fair for people who know moderation to be penalized. I was morbidly obese from the age of 7 to 17, and it was my right to be fat. I don't think the government adding even a 10% tax to junk food would have helped me. Ultimately, the best encouragement is being shamed by society because it makes you want to work for yourself. Absolutely not. I have a hard time understanding the notion of being a land of the free, and yet we won't let people consume sugary drinks? Why not tax cookies or ice cream? This tax doesn't address the heart of the issue. It capitalizes on the fact that they know people will still buy regardless of a sugar addiction. Health professional here, they should not. It has a prohibition effect, meaning that people are more likely to eat sugary foods as soon as you ban it. Trust me, I'm a doctor. This is very gray because a lot depends on how it's applied. If you just tax sodas, that's probably going to be fine as far as curbing people buying sodas. If you apply it to anything with corn syrup, you're actually getting into a lot of canned, packaged foods that honestly are cheap and WIC SNAP people are relying on to be able to afford them. Not to mention, fat is actually pretty essential to our diets, so it can be done, but likelihood of it being done, well, is low. I don't think a fat tax is necessary. However, the US need to stop with the fat acceptance nonsense. Keep putting thin and healthy women on magazine covers. Charge more for airline seats if a fat person is buying it. Go back to how it was before the day acceptance movement. Being fat should not be shown as a positive thing, just like being super thin is not a positive thing. Both are very unhealthy. You know, here is an idea. Why doesn't everyone just mind their own business? It used to be before social media, you could do what you wanted to, within reason. But everybody nowadays has to poke their nose into other people's business. As long as your behavior doesn't affect me negatively, you can do whatever the hell you want to. It's probably already been said, but it's not only fat people who drink sugary drinks or eat junk food. And beyond that, you can get fat by eating almost any kind of food, not just unhealthy ones. It's more like another poor person tax, because that's who it will affect the most. Heck no. Keep government out of this. We should be able to do this without their interference. Why can't the public take care of themselves or help those that cannot? Weight loss should not be a taboo topic. We have done a great job of social distancing. Let's learn from this. Please wake up and treat yourself like it matters. Look at the statistics for excess sugar consumption. 11 million deaths worldwide due to excess consumption and effects. Take pride and get involved. It is our bodies that is affected. Think government will take that money and use it for health training? No way. No taxes like this are largely regressive since lower income folks disproportionately eat, drink unhealthy options. The same can be said with other sin taxation as well, alcohol, tobacco, etc. Taxes are not the same as education. Growing up, I had no idea just how bad any sugary item was on the body. It's shocking to see people get obese and they're blind to what they do to themselves. Soda soft drink might as well be meth in a can. Taxes make the poor poorer, the rich richer. Even if you're not into being healthy or diets, I highly recommend looking up why people go keto. It's very enlightening about how food actually works on our bodies. Most of the people affected are those at the bottom of the income pyramid. If you make $75K, is a 20% increase on a soda going to bother you? Probably not. But if you make $25K and trying to raise a family, it means a whole lot more. Chances are they'll do something else to pay the tax. Taxing behavior never really works. Education works over time. See cigarettes and drunk driving. If policymakers were to stay consistent with the sin taxes on items that are damaging for health, liquor, cigarettes, and marijuana, I don't see why they shouldn't place a sin tax on the items that contribute most heavily to American deaths every year via obesity. AskReddit. What was the most shocking thing you've heard the quiet kids say? In class, he asked the woman teacher if he could go to the toilet. She sternly replied, "You've got 2 minutes, Richard." And Richard says, 2 minutes? It takes me that long to unravel it. Teacher goes red and everyone loses it. That kid is an absolute legend. Richard for president. We were having a nonsense elective course and we ran out of stuff to do, so we wound up having story time. My friend walks up to the front and starts telling us about how he once got pretty badly injured. Basically, he was walking into his friend's house, slipped on some black ice, face planted on it, and his front teeth tore off most of his front lip and broke off. He ran into the house babbling and bleeding. He was like 11 and was missing part of his face, so he wasn't 100% coherent at the time. And his friend's mom takes one look, runs into her bedroom, locks the door, and doesn't do anything until my friend's dad arrives and starts screaming at her. My friend says he still has no idea why the grown adult woman couldn't handle the situation any better, and we all start making guesses and nonsense psychoanalysis. Cue the quiet kid raising his magnificent head and blessing us with enlightenment. Maybe she just needed to finger herself real quick. So this one kid who barely ever said 2 words one day asked the teacher for the time. It was at some after-school thing and there was no clock. The teacher says the classic, "Time for you to get a watch," which for some reason was very funny to everybody else. The quiet kid doesn't laugh. He looks the teacher dead in the eyes, and once everyone quieted down, he says, "So are you going to tell me the time or what?" We're like in 7th grade. Can't blame him. Can't tell you how many times I've heard that stupid joke. In class, we're studying genetics, and one guy was being a real douche, and the teacher couldn't get him to shut up. Then after discussing inbreeding in dogs, one quiet kid raises his hand and says, "So, is this likely how Peter Douche became so retarded?" I've got a friend like this. I relate him to a sniper rifle. He doesn't make comments like that often, maybe once every month or two, but every one of them is damn glorious. It's an art. Most people then try to carpet bomb the conversation with forced jokes trying to get the same response. What if we killed everyone with cancer to stop it from spreading? You finally decide to speak and that is what you go with? This happens in my school all the time. You've got kids that just play on their iPad all semester, hardly paying attention, and then one day they come in with some stupid thing in the middle of a discussion. This douchebag kid who constantly messed with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friends. The quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the douchebag says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy?" The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting. "No, I am all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You want to hang out and grab some food, maybe a bit? I like to be on top, and you look like a bottom. What do you say? You want to do something tonight?" The entire line is dead silent. The douchebag starts getting all pissed off and acting like he's going to start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay, fine, you can be the top, baby." The douchebag kid leaves to the entire line laughing their asses off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the douche kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. Quiet guy I work with never said much until he came up to me and asked, "What happens when an Eskimo comes?" Before I get the chance to respond, he throws a handful of ice cream at me and walks away. It's so much funnier if you're normally a quiet person, which I'm not, but I'm still using this. In junior high in the mid-'80s, the game Trivial Pursuit was all the rage. We played it in math class one day, and this kid, Gary, who never said anything at all, totally spanked everyone else by answering every single sports-related trivia question. He got a lot of attention for it, and I believe he walked a little taller after that day. I don't think I ever heard him say anything else, but I did see him sitting on the bleachers at a few sports events. At school, having just shown me the scope for supposedly his sniper rifle, If the fire alarm ever goes off, you can't find me. Don't use the doors as an exit. Well, he was nice enough to warn you. The quiet kid from my grade school stood up one day, grabbed a broom, stood on a chair, and began trying to swat bees that got inside. One bee landed on the window where quiet kid proceeded to yell, "Die, bee, die!" and then swatted and shattered the window. He screeched when it happened and then sat back down. Never heard him speak again. That man is going to be Valhalla after a bee-related incident. One of my students hardly said a word all year until a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to get a group of talkative ones under control, and she said enough. She yells out, "Shut the up! I'm trying to work, you rude guys." Awkward silence followed, because I don't know how to handle the normally stupidious and quiet one losing it. I was like this in middle school. Not exactly quiet, but I never really socialized except with people right behind me in the form of asking for a pencil. One day the classroom douche happened to be more douchier than I could stand for, and I stood up out of my seat and yelled at him and sat back down. The entire class fell silent, but he never got that douchey again. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." Similar to a friend of mine. The thing about rain is that it makes mud. My dad is very quiet, to the point that it makes most people uncomfortable, even me sometimes. One day, we're at the park and a woman walks past us and my dad quickly says, "What if I punched that woman in the face and said, 'Sorry, I thought you were my wife'?" That's my kind of humor. In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry, unless you asked her something. Even then, she appeared terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost the contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said, "Ryan," her prom date, "just fingered out of me." I still laugh about it to this day. He started to attack someone in my class with a table when the teacher got a cup of coffee. That was quite something. Wait, he attacked another guy with a table? That's like a whole new level of pissed off right there. I was in a marching band in high school, probably 7 years ago now, and we had this huge muscular guy as our brass instructor. He would always yell at us to nail these chords, or "You're not playing loud enough." There was this little Asian trumpet kid that was so innocent and nice. He barely ever spoke a word. One really hot afternoon, our instructor was being especially loud and said, "Why don't the trumpets blow hard enough?" Dead silence across the field as all the brass are waiting the next instructions. Then we hear, "Why doesn't your mom blow this PP hard enough?" from quiet trumpet kid. Needless to say, we all laughed, got push-ups, and laughed some more. Wow, literally this question came at a perfect time. I was just thinking about this, and it was by far in sophomore year of high school. This kid was so odd that honestly no one ever really noticed him. But one day he's sitting across from me at a table, and he sees this one girl in really tight shorts and goes, "Damn, I could have my head up her ass for months." It was pretty shocking. Dude could have worn her like a hat. I went to middle school and high school with this boy named Daniel. Never once heard him say a word. A friend of mine said he would whisper sometimes. The night of our senior party, we heard some music coming over from the corner where the karaoke machine was set up. At first, no one really noticed him because people had been singing on it all night, and most people stopped paying attention. But this was different, because no one was singing and the music was playing. The DJ stopped the music and started the song again. Daniel was standing there looking frightened, but this time around, when the song started, he began to sing. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing and just crowded around him. He wasn't a great singer by any means, but 99% of the people in the room hadn't ever heard him talk. When the song was over, everyone started clapping and cheering, and he walked away with a big smile on his face. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatello, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day we were looking out the classroom window as a cop drove by. Donatello opens his mouth and says, "Police car." At the time, we were all excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. Living in a sewer with 3 brothers and a talking rat who forces you to do karate all day does that to you. In high school, I had first level Spanish with this kid who was super quiet. At the end of the year, we all had to give a speech in Spanish in front of the entire class. This kid stood up and gave a speech, not in Spanish, but in a language that he had spent the entire year inventing. Kid, I've never heard you say anything loudly. You need to shout something out. Quiet kid. What? Kid, shout something. In the middle of the classroom, a full-blow, high-pitched roar is heard. Quiet kid. Christmas! It was a Muslim kid who didn't even celebrate Christmas. What a dude. Man, Christmas sucked for Muslim kids at school. Teacher would usually bring little gifts, get super paranoid that I'd be offended, and hasten to find something religiously neutral, as opposed to the gift everyone else got. Screw kaleidoscopes. Playing rugby, hooker fails completely at line-out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Quietest guy on the team, never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mom can help. Proceed to fall on floor. Aw man, hooker jokes. I miss rugby. Ask Reddit. Nurses and doctors of Reddit. What's your weirdest, scariest paranormal stories that took place during work? Did a rotation in a burn unit. There are tons of stories that go around, but I'll share my favorite. A pimp lit one of his prostitutes on fire, and she immediately bear hugged him, causing them both to suffer pretty severe injuries. Unfortunately, hers included an inhalation burn. They both were being treated in the same ICU, but on opposite ends. Weeks later, she ends up coding and passes away. And after about 30 minutes, as things start to quiet down, the guy starts screaming from his room, "Get her out! Get the damn girl out of my room!" There is probably some medical explanation for this, but still the weirdest thing I've ever seen as a nurse so far. We had a very robust, confused old lady on our floor. Her room was in front of the nurse's station so we could keep an eye on her, and had one of our nurse's aides as a sitter too. She was always fighting, kicking, trying to get out of bed, very restless and agitated, as some patients I've had before can get before death. One day we were called into the room as her heart rate was going down and she lay still with her eyes open. It was 30, 20, then flatlined. We checked for a pulse and did not find any. She was a DNR, so we did not attempt resuscitation. We closed her eyes, prepared to get the body bag and call the family. The sitter remains in there to start getting the body ready. Less than 10 minutes later, she calls us back in. The old lady is at it again, hitting, kicking, trying to get out of the bed. She came back to life. Honestly, we found the situation hilarious, and I still have never seen any patient come back to life like that on their own. I think she made it out of the hospital too. I'm an ICU nurse. A patient's son rang the hospital at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night saying he was sure his dad was dying. His dad had a severe stroke and was doing okay. Recovery would be difficult, but he wasn't expected to die and was pretty stable at the time. I was looking after him, and he was a lot of work because he would try to get up but couldn't walk, so he'd fallen a lot. The son really wanted to come in, even though it's way past visiting hours, but I'll bend the rules in for a good cause. I figured, what the heck, it's Saturday night, come on in and sit with your dad. Patient died about 2 minutes before the son walked in the door. It was like a switch was turned off. He just died. The last thing he said to me was, "Am I bothering anyone?" I told him of course not, even though he had some very frustrating behavior because of the stroke. The son just started crying and screaming. I knew it. How the heck he knew? We were all a bit freaked out. I've worked in a small family-run nursing home for 6 years as a nurse aide. It was an orphanage before it became a nursing home, and unfortunately, before being shut down, the orphanage had a history of severe abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, it's not gossip the owner herself told us. When residents get close to death, they always see a little girl. One of my patients is a very alert gentleman who knew all our names and was very alert and oriented. I was passing dinner trays and saw that he had his back turned and was talking and laughing in the corner. I knocked and asked him who he was talking to, and he chuckled and said, "This little girl came into my room. She was scared." He died 3 days later. About 6 months later, had another patient screaming about a little girl grabbing his feet, and she needed to leave him alone. He died that night. She's come up over the years. It's always the same thing. They see her and then they die. Other co-workers have had the same experience. It's very unsettling. I am a nurse in a hospital, and my patient was a well-known card reader in town, not too heard of in Louisiana. I had actually gone to her about 10 years prior, and she was eerily accurate. While caring for her for a few days, I walked into her room, and she was unresponsive. She had been very lethargic all day, but now she was out. Her daughter is at the bedside and is trying to wake her up. I sternal rub her and inflict pain with no response and a very thready pulse. I call a rapid response. This woman then wakes up randomly and was full of energy within a 30-second span. She told me she was dead and watching me in the room the whole time, knew exactly what happened. She said God told her it wasn't her time and sent her back. She went home a couple days later and she is still doing card readings. She's in her late 80s. I'm a psychiatric nurse. Early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. There was a resident I'll call Marion Duchesne. He was an elective mute, which simply means that he couldn't talk, but there was no pathological findings as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the notable exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19. After boot camp, he was stationed somewhere in the South. One night, he just vanished. It was declared an AWOL for years, and finally he was declared missing and dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchesne, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust and he was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. He was well fed and in good health except for his refusal to speak. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man and that whomever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They said there was a haint and a stand-in for their dead relative and demanded not to be contacted again. Marion paced all day, every day. Not in a frantic way, but just lumbering up and down the halls and outside. He smiled all the time and would be moving his mouth in a way that indicated talking or muttering, but he was dead silent. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open, as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If told to go to the dining room for a meal, he'd go and eat. But if nobody told him, he just kept pacing, never indicating hunger. If offered a cigarette, he'd smoke it in an oddly formal way, almost delicately, if that makes sense. But he never seemed to crave smoking. The man wanted nothing. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. There was nothing to do for this man. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin, and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at the job, on my way to something better, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later, I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, I still don't know. I worked in a pediatric hospital and had always heard that the 4th floor right outside our oncology unit was haunted. I worked 312s normally, but would pick up overtime and picked up a night shift. I was working in the NICU, which happened to also be on the 4th floor, but on the opposite side. The oncology unit had a staircase that was a shortcut down to the cafeteria which was on the second floor. At about 3 a.m., I was ready to take a short break and wanted a cup of coffee from the cafeteria, so I decided to take that staircase. I walked through the automatic double doors and saw a kid skipping down the hall. I called out to him as I was afraid a little kid had snuck out of a patient's room. As soon as I called out to him, he turned and in the blink of an eye totally vanished. A lot of other nurses and docs had seen the same little kid skipping in that same hallway. Of course, I chalked it up to just exhaustion and didn't really think about it much after that. But you are damn sure I didn't use that hallway at night ever again. I was working at night and one of the patients died while I was in the room. We tried everything to revive this person, but it didn't work out. So after doing the papers and everything, I went to another place in the hospital and I swear that this patient who I saw dead touched my right arm. I think that I have never cried that much in my life. Maybe it was their way of saying thanks for trying. One of the rooms we have is obviously having something of a haunting. A man in a gown gestured each one of the techs to come in. She went in and he was gone. 1 week earlier, a female patient was asking to get a different room because a man wouldn't leave her room. We just thought it was some sort of delirium. Maybe others have seen him too. Savage Amelia. I grew up in an old farmhouse and I saw an old man ghost walking down the corridor with his back to me before disappearing into thin air after turning into a room at the end of the corridor. My mother, brother, as well as 2 tradesmen also saw the exact same ghost and sequence of events at different times over the years. I used to work in a nursing home, both as a CNA and an LPN, and while nothing too crazy happened, there were definitely things that happened out of the ordinary. I remember one time after someone had died, I was cleaning up her body and the door to the room swung open even though it had been firmly latched. Nobody was there. It gave me the creeps. There were instances of furniture being moved, lights turning on and off by themselves, and toilets randomly flushing by themselves as well. I also remember I had one resident one night who asked me to make sure I closed the door to the closet that was at the end of her bed. And she told me that when it was open, that woman kept going in and out of it all night and it kept her awake. Oh, I have so many I don't know where to start. I worked in a geriatrics nursing homes for years, so most of our patients died within a few years of being with us. Anyways, I had a new patient move into one of the rooms on my hall that my previous patient had just passed in. My new patient kept calling at night saying that there was this woman who kept coming into her room and trying to talk to her. At first I just passed it off on her being in her 90s and struggling with dementia. So I assured her that I would lock her door at night to make sure no one could come in. After about a week of this continuing to happen, I sat down with her and was asking what the woman looked like, thinking she may just be hallucinating her daughter or sister or something. And she proceeded to tell me that this woman had a pink robe on with blue fuzzy slippers and her hair up in curlers, and the woman would come in and sit at the foot of her bed, pat the new patient's feet, and try to talk to her, but she couldn't understand what she was saying. I almost pissed myself. The patient that I had in that room prior to my new one went to bed every night in her pink house robe, blue slippers, and her hair in curlers. It stopped after about 2 weeks. A ward I worked on once had a patient who was a psychic medium as a patient. We had a bit of a laugh with her as she was on the ward for a while. She'd had a stroke which affected her mobility, and she would do readings for the staff, etc. from time to time. I took it all as just a bit of fun until one evening when she pressed her nurse call buzzer and told us to go check on a patient in a side room as he was dead. We went to check and sure enough found that the gentleman had died. Later on, we asked our psychic patient how she had known, and she told us she had seen him coming out of his room and obviously distressed. She realized he had died and had to explain to him what had happened and help him to pass over, go to the light. Now, I am not a believer, but that gave me the creeps. AskReddit. What is the best reply to, "You aren't funny"? 18 minutes of continuous crying is usually my response. I don't even remember the last time I cried this long. It's usually 2 minutes of tears, followed by 30 minutes of sadness, overthinking part. I always try to make myself laugh. Anyone else is just a bonus. I genuinely like this. In recent years, I've stabilized my life long enough in my career and personal life to legitimately stop caring about the opinions of most people. It's liberating, and I found myself enjoying my own company more. I don't shy away from being friendly or kind, but if someone wants to be a rude guy, it doesn't faze me anymore. Maybe it's got to do with age, but the older I get, the more I find that hell is other people. Plus, I'm really great to be around when I'm alone. I'm not joking. There was one day I was in high school where from time to time I would say something not intended to be a joke, just like observations and stuff. And this one guy kept going, "You're not funny." And I go, "I wasn't trying to be funny," because I genuinely wasn't. If I was trying to be funny, I'd own up to it. But he kept saying it whenever I said something. After like the 5th time, I genuinely shouted, "I'm not trying to be funny." I hated that guy. We can't all get a laugh by just dropping our pants. This and your parents' one is the best. My parents saved me when their side wanted me to be alive. Is this a joke? Am I alive? I don't know, but it is 2020 still, but no virus. That makes 2 of us. Martyrdom. Drop a live grenade when killed. You aren't funny. Got him? This one, actually, sadly can work. There are people that need to be the only funny person around and will bring other people down by saying they're not funny or making fun of them. A simple "neither are you" is just enough to get them huffy. No matter what they say to that, it just comes off as defensive. It's juvenile, but that might be why it works. Haha, great one. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. Of course I'm not funny. I'm Dad. I bloody despise you at the moment. Well done, Dad. I don't eat well done, Dad. The consistency is just awful. I'll take a medium, Dad. If I wanted tips on how to make a joke, I'd ask your parents. Glad so many people like this. It came to me when I was having a fake argument with myself. You should be proud of yourself. If you're in public, loudly say, "At least I don't make out with my sister." This cracked me up. This is one of my faves. Thanks. This will put off and confuse them with no result of hurting your feelings. Anyone that says something like that is a rude guy and has no chill. But then the person could reply back, "You're welcome." Tell that to the laugh track I carry around. This is only funny if you have a stock laugh track prepared on your phone. LOL, okay. Do you actually say LOL in person? I do. If you can't beat 'em, eat 'em. Jeffrey Dahmer, the people nommer. If you beat them and they run out into the street naked and run into 2 police officers, convince the officers that you are having a lover's quarrel, then take them back into your house and eat them. And then the officer gets a promotion. Ta-da! Tell me how to be funny then. So this scientist turns himself into a pickle. Funniest thing I've ever seen. But I am funny looking. That's part of my pickup line. Hey, I'm both funny and funny looking, so I know I'll make you laugh. I'm expecting a pretty low success rate with this one. I know, I just don't care. This is probably the best response. You are free to leave. Am I being detained? I don't have a good reply to this. If it's said to me, I just kind of chuckle and say, "Yeah," as in, "Yeah, you're right." Same. I either say that or, "I know." Really depends on the situation. Are you the person in control, and is someone just making a desperate attempt to take you down? Just recognize you heard him by pausing shortly while frowning. Then carry on your conversation, ignoring it. Are you actually harming your own position because you're doubling down on wrong moment? Take a breath, keep your head up, shoulders back, and say something like, "Ouch, I needed to hear that," or, "I guess you're right." Then shut up for a few minutes and get a new beer. Ask if someone else wants something. If you don't get a response to that question, go make conversation somewhere else. If you do get a response, even if it's "Nah, we're good," you can return, and when you get back, you can carefully try to get back into the conversation. When someone says, "You're not funny," it's most likely you've already missed some hints and probably have been making a fool out of yourself for quite some time. The only way to save face is to demonstrate the strength you can deal with reality. Know your new and temporary place, and won't hold it personally against the person that helped you out by warning you. Even if it was done in a dick way, you probably missed the hints leading up to the snap. If it's not warranted, okay. If it is warranted, hand gesture, fair enough. Trying to be clever here will just make you look like you watch Rick and Morty and talk about Pickle Rick unless you have Lee Mack level wit, in which case nobody will be telling you aren't funny. You're not nice. I like this, just guilt out the person. If it gets to that point, you must have annoyed someone with some annoying thing, LOL. When that line is invoked, it's usually because the person is trying too hard to be funny. A lot of these wouldn't really work too well if the person was trying too hard. Well, looks aren't everything. This deserves more upvotes. It's gold. I don't mean to deride you or anything, but this doesn't compute for me. Typically, I associate the phrasing as, "You're funny, but looks aren't everything," which implies the only thing funny about this person was their looks. But if they say you aren't funny, then you can't lean in on your looks even as self-deprecating out. I know, I have so much trouble with humor that I have to ask in forum posts for witty comebacks. Outwitted, LOL. Fair enough. I wasn't trying to be. People who say that are usually the unfunniest. In this thread, a lot of unfunny people. I'm reading this thread and cringing. No, you. Uno reverse them. Literally pull out the Uno reverse card you keep in your pocket at all times. Yeah, well, the jerk store called and they're running out of you. What's the difference? You're their all-time bestseller. I was a comedian for a few years. After a show, a girl hit me with, "You aren't funny." I hit back with, "And you aren't pretty, but at least I have the option to talk about the weather. Was your material funny in hindsight?" She's bad for saying it, but you can't swing a bat in a comedy club without hitting a comedian who hasn't found they're funny. Well, you just missed a perfect opportunity to stay silent. Not talking or typing, just trusting God. Man, it's painful to see so many people pretend to be witty. These are bad. Few of them were good, but suddenly we were taken to a tour of damn Cringe Town. Yes, I am. Hell to you. Tell me something I don't already know. The dot on a lowercase I is called a tittle. Just start crying and talk about your horrible childhood. They always seem to apologize, so it works for me. You're not funny. Uncontrollable sobbing. I'm sorry, you can spank me now, Daddy. Call me Dada. I thought of a response to this and it was too horrible to pass up, sorry. I know, I tried. That's just sad. I'll put your opinion on a savings account. Maybe in some years it will generate some interest for me. Nah, you sound like a dork, to be honest. Do some self-reflection. Sometimes we're offensive or bad when we're trying to be funny, and people are genuinely irritated by it. It happens to everyone, but the appropriate response is to do some critical thinking to figure out how much, if any, you need to amend your behavior, and then go from there. Sorry, this isn't the snarky answer that you guys might want, but I think it's the best way to be. It's a bit hard to make a clown laugh outside the circus. Oh, this is a good one. You should tell them that at parties. The best reply is to continue whichever joke you were making before the comment and make it funny. If you can't, you're not funny. Or maybe you are and you should just let this one go and wait for your next opportunity to be funny. No generic comment on Reddit will be a good response to this. It's situational. Well, okay, that's your opinion. I actually do think it's a pretty good response. If other people will back you up, I think it's pretty good. But if it's just two people, or people don't back you up on them, it's not super great. Is that something people say to each other in conversation? To answer the question, I just say "K" and keep moving on. One person not finding someone funny doesn't make that person not funny. I've literally only ever heard it said out loud in response to someone who is trying to pass off being a raging rude as funny. Like if they said something super mean or offensive and tried to act like it's fine because they add an, it's just a joke, tacked on at the end. AskReddit. Lawyers of Reddit. What is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? Part 2. My father is a judge. I remember him talking about a case where a woman was suing for a severe back injury that she said was preventing her from working and taking care of her kids and so on. In the middle of the trial, a pen rolled off the table and she is bending over trying to reach it from her chair, but pen was too far away. So she stands up and bends over and picks it up and goes back to her seat as if nothing is out of the ordinary. My dad is just looking at her and she snaps at my dad and goes, "What are you staring at?" My dad asked her if she was okay and her response was that she was fine. Her attorney leaned over and said something to her, and then she loudly started complaining about her back and how much her back hurt, but no one believed her. LOL. This one ended my marriage. Well, it was the start of the end of a marriage. My husband lost his job in the title mortgage business. Applied for unemployment, got denied. I decided to help him with his appeal hearing. I asked him multiple times before the hearing, "Is there anything you did that caused them to fire you?" He says, "No, absolutely not. They fired him out of nowhere." Hearing day comes. He testifies under oath that he did nothing wrong, was a good employee, no issue. Upon cross-examination, the other attorney pulls out documents from one of his real estate closings. Documents he forged and backdated. Had to admit he perjured himself. Needless to say, he didn't get unemployment, and he didn't sleep at home that night. I and all. And it's not even my stories, but my dad's. He was working as a fraud investigator for an insurance company. I have a few stories of his, but here's 2 of them. Guy was claiming theft of multiple items, but mainly a ring. Things weren't adding up, so my dad and the insurance company's lawyer decided to go do a depot of him. Guy shows up and is doing the depot when my dad notices the guy is wearing the exact same ring he's claiming was stolen. My dad slides a note to the lawyer telling him the guy is wearing the ring. Once the note got slid, the guy realized what happened and put his hands under the table and took the ring off. They asked him to stand up, and lo and behold, the ring fell to the ground. Another one is a guy claiming a break-in and theft. Immediately, things weren't adding up as the window was broken out instead of in. The guy submitted Polaroids of items he claimed were his, like TVs and such. Thing is, the Polaroids, you could see the reflection of the store they were in on the glass. He also claimed numerous CDs, records, but oddly enough, every single one of them started with an R, S, or a T. We're talking hundreds of CDs records. My dad was about to deny the claim in person, but noticed he had a gun on the table, so he decided to do it over the phone. Ready for an escalation? Later, the same guy was arrested for beheading a prostitute and throwing her head in the river. Not my case, which is a gift from above, really. Civil trial before a jury for injuries and prop damage from an MVA and punitive damages because defendant was intoxicated at the time of the accident. Let's call defendant DUI. Almost doesn't need to be said, but before DUI ever stepped foot in court, they would have been prepped repeatedly, first for the depositions and then for the trial testimony, with the standard questions. Were there any prior incidents, arrest convictions, anything that can be used to impeach any of DUI's testimony, yada yada, over hours. Denies everything and is as clean as a clean whistle. Thus, at trial, defense counsel puts DUI on the stand to give them an opportunity to tell the jury of their contrition for this one-time error in judgment, describe the difficult time DUI was going through at the time, and otherwise show themselves to the jury as an upstanding member of society in order to reduce punitive damage. It goes well. Then plaintiff's counsel gets to cross. I'm going to paraphrase what allegedly happened next, which is purely hearsay. PA. Earlier, you testified that this was a one-time mistake and you've learned from your lesson. Is that correct? DUI. Yes. PA. Isn't it true that you've already been convicted of a DUI in another state? DUI sits silent as DC immediately objects, but it's properly overruled and DUI must answer. Since what happens next is impeachment, I'll skip the objections, but suffice to say they were being fired off as rapidly as a machine gun and just as rapidly overruled. DUI. Yes. PA. And isn't it true that in your prior DUI, a child died? You can imagine what's happening in the courtroom and most importantly amongst the jury, and you think it's over. Stick a fork in DUI, it's done. But then, PA goes for the jugular. Do you remember the name of that little girl that you killed while you were driving while intoxicated? IMO, this question is one for the ages, more powerful than the old. When did you stop beating your wife? Because no matter how you answer, and that is why you never ever lie to your attorney. Not me, but my mentor. This is the reason you never ask questions that you don't already know the answer to in court. During the trial with the judge on a divorce matter, the wife brought up that he had abused her during the course of their marriage. Client whispers to my mentor that this is absolutely not true. On the stand, during his portion of testimony, my mentor asks, "At any point in the marriage, did you lay your hands on your wife?" One time we were having an argument and I held her down on the couch until she stopped arguing with me. What? My mentor said it was like she could see it happening in slow motion and all of the alarm bells were going off in her head because she had never mentioned this, and apparently to him, this was not abuse. The judge gave wife a lot more money as a result, and husband was baffled. My mentor was fuming. Husband admitted this was the only time he laid hands on wife. My mentor was more peeved because she had thought the case was in the bag since wife had abandoned the kids with the husband to run off with her lover down in Florida and literally only came back to the state to get the divorce done. Husband had been noted as being a great dad to the kids and a good figure in the community, hence why she was so damn shocked at his answer. I was approached by this attorney to work for him for free to go after smugglers. This guy had been arrested for dumping goods onto American markets that violated trade agreements. In his arrest, a bunch of goods were left in the warehouses to rot, and their owners, his clients, were never paid. This attorney showed me that this smuggler had assets, and that he had gone to the criminal trial and gotten the judge to set aside $2 million of the criminal penalties to settle his client's debts. He had receipts, invoices, all of the paperwork. He just needed associates to help him take the case to trial. He wanted me to work for free, but he would pay me on the contingency once he obtained the verdict. He had 2 other attorneys working for him with the same deal. I worked on the case for a short while, but luckily moved on to other things. The other 2 attorneys worked on that case for over 2 years. At one point, they negotiated a $1.5 million settlement of all claims. The attorney in charge rejected the offer because he was convinced he could get twice as much at trial. In the end, the case settled for $200K because none of the clients would enter the United States to testify for fear of being arrested. The 2 associates got $8,000 apiece for 2 years of work. I'm still a law student, and this happened during my first internship at a court. A girl among other people was charged with drug possession, but because she had thrown away the drugs and the police couldn't prove that she bought or owned the drugs, because it could have been one of the other people as well who still had drugs on them, the judge ruled in dubio pro reo. He then asked if she wants to add something, and this girl asked if she could get her drugs back. The defense attorney looked like he was about to get a heart attack. I had a client who, despite being a large man, had been domestically abused by his much smaller wife throughout their marriage. After the divorce, she turned her anger on their son. He ran away one day to live with his dad, and we filed to restrict her parenting time and for a permanent modification. At the permanent hearing, she denied being abusive to the child or my client in front of the child, said she never threatened anyone ever, and that she never made disparaging remarks about my client in front of their son. What she didn't know, and therefore hadn't told her attorney, is that he had recorded multiple instances of her abuse. So I called my client back up for rebuttal and played an audio recording of her screaming at my client, threatening to break his face and calling him a loser, all while the child could be heard in the background begging her to stop. I looked over at the other attorney and she had her face in her hands. We won. Years ago, I had a client charged with drunk in public. It's a minor infraction, but he was on probation, so he needed to fight it. He told me he was very drunk that night, but had made it to the lobby of his brother's apartment and was waiting for him to come down to get him upstairs. I take this information and run with it, bringing photos of the apartment complex and the bylaws to court. My goal was to prove that the lobby of the apartment was secured to guests and residents only, which would arguably take the drunkenness out of being in public. There is no formal discovery for minor infractions in my state. Since there isn't a real option for a plea deal on the minor charge and wanting to ambush the officer with my argument, I do not discuss the case with him and we go to trial. The wheels come off the wagon when the officer testified that he encountered my client at an apartment building on the other side of the city. He was outside at the call box, not even in the lobby of this different building, rambling and barely able to stand. I'm whispering to my client about his reversal, and he slumps over and says something to the effect of, "Sorry, I meant to go to my brother's apartment. Maybe that's why he couldn't find me." And he sounded angry on that phone. Cross-examination was not fruitful. It was basically, "Officer, are you really sure it happened where you said it did and not at this other apartment building miles away?" Closing argument that he wasn't that drunk also didn't get us anywhere. In the end, there was a fast guilty finding, a minor fine, wasted ink, and paper from printing useless exhibits, and light sanctions later on the probation violation. Employment law matter. He claimed to have been unfairly dismissed over bogus performance management. The real reason? He organized via Craigslist to have someone collect a box of his cum from a child's playground. There were explicit messages from him asking what they did with it and whether they rubbed it all over themselves. The employer provided us with the messages. FDA dismissed a guy for insider trading. He would access a database of drugs about to be approved, which nearly always caused stock to go up. He made millions buying stock in his family's name to cover his tracks. But he made a fatal mistake. He looked at the database and then bought stock with his work computer, which FDA owned and could search without consent. You click a statement to the effect each time you sign on. If he'd waited and done it on his own computer, they'd have to get a search warrant, a much tougher proposition. AskReddit. Lawyers of Reddit. What is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? Part 1. Opposing counsel. Isn't it true you hit victim in the face with a brick? Client. No, Marcus hit him with the brick. I hit him in the back with a piece of wood. To be fair. He'd sent a photo of his wife's beaten face to his wife with a message saying something along the lines of this: "Do you want this to happen again?" He came across very well in court up to that point, but his mask slipped when that came out. Yeah, sounds like someone I know. He can keep the mask on for a while, but it starts to slip when his perceived world isn't reality. A buddy of mine came as a public defender. A gal was busted on drug charges and told him she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her. He thought, okay, we'll use that. Turns out she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her because she just sold them to an undercover cop. Well, technically. Just kidding. I do wonder though if she was actually smart enough to think of that on her own, or was she just being stupid? Well, I guess technically she was being stupid either way. LOL. My house was robbed. In addition to all the stuff that the thief took, he also stole a bunch of my suits and all my neckties. I had a big collection, like 100 or so. However, the thief left fingerprints on a hard plastic box that I kept spare change in. Fast forward 3 months, the thief is caught in the act of robbing another house in the same neighborhood, same detectives on my case as the new theft. They fingerprint the guy and the fingerprints match the ones from my house. At the thief's arraignment, I see him stroll in wearing my suit and my tie. I tell the district attorney. He says there's really no way to prove it. However, the tie he chose to wear was a one-of-a-kind street map of San Francisco, and I still had all the documentation to prove it. The district attorney's eyes widened and he informs the judge. The judge has the thief placed under arrest again for possession of the stolen property. The thief's lawyer was dumbfounded. It was a nice end to a rough situation. Custody case. The client failed to tell me he was previously convicted of felony child abuse for breaking 16 bones in an infant's body. Sometimes I wish we could just stone people. I've often thought about how satisfying different sadistic punishments would be, but then realized that if you were to actually do something like that, then you're not really much different from the person you're punishing. Just give them a shot and put them down like a sick dog. Little late to the party, but here goes. And obligatory, not my client. The company I worked for at the time was doing due diligence before acquiring a small tech startup. The COO of the tech startup was a well-liked guy in the company, friendly and outgoing. Though we heard rumblings that the COO was rather hands-on with the work and with the female employees. Apparently there was a walkaway package proposed to the COO that would let him keep a sizable portion of his post-acquisition bonus because a young woman who worked in their sales department had filed HR complaints against the COO and obtained counsel. I sat in on the meeting with the COO and the company's retained lawyers while they grilled him about his contacts with the young women. The COO denied ever having contact with her within the company without multiple other people present. Those people said his behavior toward her in the meeting didn't raise any flags. The COO empathetically denied having any contact with her outside of work. The lawyers asked the question a half a dozen different ways, and each time the COO denied any out-of-work contact. Later, we met with the woman and her lawyer with the COO not present. Her lawyer gives us a rather graphic card that came with a bouquet of flowers addressed to her from the COO. The guy had an account with a florist linked to his credit card. When the company retained lawyers confronted him and he said, "But I never had contact with her. It's not like I delivered the flowers myself." COO got terminated for cause, so no walkaway package. At her request, the woman was given PTO until after the acquisition, then moved to another one of the companies under our umbrella. Lawyer in the UK. I acted for a member of a famous pedophile hunting group. My client was charged with various offenses relating to his vigilantism, most seriously causing grievously bodily harm with intent. He wanted me to fight the case on a public interest offense point that is not available to him in statute or at common law, contrary to my advice. I followed his instructions as I'm bound to do. If the state won't punish pedophiles properly, then it's left to men like my client to take the law into their own hands. A horse-dung argument for a whole host of reasons. His laptop was seized by police and submitted for forensic examination. He had a staggeringly huge database of child pornography on it. He himself was a massive pedo. Minor traffic cases can be the worst for this. Believe it or not, because they are short and simple, and oftentimes the client isn't there, so if you get blindsided by something critical, there's often no chance to consult with them to turn things around. I had a simple speeding case, 70 miles per hour in a 55. No big deal. If she does a driving improvement course, the court will usually dismiss or reduce those, since her driving record wasn't bad. When I showed up for her, I found out that she had been driving 70 up an unplowed snow lane to get around all the other cars traveling in the lane that had been plowed because they were driving too slow. I didn't know it was even possible to drive 70 on fresh snow. The officer stated he'd already cut her a break by not writing the ticket for reckless driving, and the judge politely agreed he didn't feel comfortable reducing it under those circumstances. When I called her up after court to confirm, she did. Claimed she'd just forgotten to mention it. Now maybe I've lived too much of my life in the South, but that just boggles my mind as a detail you'd forget when hiring a lawyer for that incident. I would have told her in advance that hiring us was a waste of money, not to mention the hassle of taking an 8-hour class, and she should probably just go ahead and pay this one. I legitimately do that all the time during consults. Give my honest assessment if the case is even worth doing, and so by admitting the detail she harmed herself for no reason. At least she took it well and didn't get defensive. Friend of mine is a defense attorney. He was representing a guy with a lengthy record for assault. Basically, this guy took an AC unit and threw it at his girlfriend. My buddy tells me he was able to get a plea deal for 1 year probation, no jail time. The judge is all ready to accept the deal when he asks the defendant if he had anything he would like to say. The defendant responds, "Yeah, I don't know why they're charging me with assault. I never touched her. I just threw an AC at her." This is nonsense. Judge rescinded plea deal because of defendant's attitude and lack of remorse. Went to trial and got a year in jail. The idea of having an AC unit thrown at me is honestly terrifying. Client said his ex owed him a lot of money and that she was trying to get out of paying him back by getting a protective order against him. Seemed reasonable, so I took his case. At the hearing, it came out that they were never a couple. that he was sending sex toys to her residence on a weekly basis and that she never asked for thousands of dollars he gave her over the years. Stripper. We lost. He got laughed out of court and he learned a valuable lesson. Tell your lawyer the good and the bad stuff before the trial. That he filmed his offenses for his YouTube channel. The cops didn't even know. A witness brought it up on day 3 of a trial. It was a nice quick change of plea that afternoon. So you're saying it's just a prank, bro, isn't a valid legal defense? Not since Prankster versus Bro in 1986. There's so many. My dude in a custody battle where the opposing party claims he has a drinking problem and he denies it 1000%. Even after the real talk I have with him, asking him to not hide things from me, and to be honest, we go into court and at cross-examination, the opposing party provides video evidence of him finishing work, driving to an abandoned parking lot to drink a few tall boys, and then going to pick up his kids from school. Every single access visit. He not only didn't tell me that, he forgot to mention that his ex-brother owns a private investigating firm. Idiot. It's clearly not a problem. I have time to stop and leisurely drink a few. It's no trouble at all. Man, already have the deck stacked against you and decide, hey, let's play divorce on hard mode. Case is a paralegal. Negligence case. Client argued that a lack of streetlights and a cyclist he couldn't see was responsible for him hitting a wire pole. Upon discovery, the first respondent's report indicated that they found the driver in the driver's seat, pants down, with porn playing on the phone. Wasn't difficult to figure out who was negligent at that point. Your Honor, if the cable repairman had simply fixed the cable in accordance with the professional standard practices, my client would have had no other recourse but to keep his ostrich in the corral on the evening in question. Guy in prison hired me to request a modification of his sentence because he was doing very well, completing a lot of optional programs, no rule violations, etc. He had his family come in and pay and everything to get started. I asked the family and the client if he had requested modification before because the law said that for his conviction, he could only request modification twice for any one sentence, regardless of if they were granted or denied. Swore to us up and down he'd never filed before. You can see where this is going. After spending a few hours going over records and preparing documents, a copy of the CCS, the case record basically, finally arrived. He'd personally filed for modification 6 times since he was arrested with handwritten pleadings that were all denied. So the one he hired me for was the waste of time and would never be considered at all. Employment case. We get to the deposition of my client and all set up. The first question is, please state your name. The client looks at me and says, can we take a break? We do, and she pulls me out into the hall and tells me she's lied to me about her identity. She's apparently a serial fraudster and has changed identity 7 times since the 90s. She apparently thought the other attorneys had somehow figured it out, and that's why they asked the question. I've got a Mr. Poe online too. Something about a heart? I'm a court-appointed attorney for qualifying individuals and family matters. Termination of parental rights case. Have been fighting to argue that parent is stable, working lawfully, has a suitable apartment, doesn't need psychotropic meds anymore, ready to be a parent, etc. After a few months of negotiating with all the parties and Department of Children, Court Services, we have a pre-trial to try and convince guardians. I met with my client before the hearing to see if anything changed. Nope, all good. Let's get my kids. Great, that's not happening today, but let's try. We get going in court. My client, who is super hot-headed and quick to anger, gets riled up and goes off on the guardians, screaming in open court. It doesn't end there, but reveals 1, that no longer is working, 2, no longer in apartment, 3, doesn't want to have a relationship with the guardians despite her kids loving them, 4, won't send her kids pictures of the toys they miss and can't have, 5, plans on moving out of state, 6, thinks they can live as a family off of state aid when she gets them back, and is 4 months pregnant. All in the matter of 15 seconds. I was too shocked to even react. Speechless. Not the image of stability and parental fitness I've been trying to paint since last July. AskReddit. McDonald's now sells sad meals. What items would you find in them? My dad likes liver. When I was a little kid, my grandmother brought some over for him, and for some reason she put it in an old McDonald's bag. I came home from school and opened up the fridge to get a snack, and saw a McDonald's bag in there, and excitedly opened it up only to find a Ziploc bag full of raw liver. So that, the exact same food just haphazardly tossed in a box with no wrapping. Shake the box for extra effect. Toy would be a DIY cardboard set. So what Wendy's currently gives out in their kids' meals? LOL. Figurines of skinny beautiful people eating McDonald's with a little button that says, "You'll never be good enough," when you push it. Featuring other fun phrases. "You're such a disappointment to your parents." Anything you think you're good at, there's some 5-year-old kid who is far better at it. 10-year-olds on YouTube are making your annual salary in a day just from opening a box. Your partner never loved you. Your friends only just tolerate you. Doubt it makes much difference. Happy Meals totally don't work. I ate 12 of them once, and if anything, I felt even worse afterwards. I'm a teacher and had this conversation with one of my students. "How was your weekend?" "It was great. We went shopping, and I got to go to McDonald's." "Oh, wow. That sounds like a lot of fun. What did you eat at McDonald's?" "I got a Happy Meal with chicken nuggets and Sprite, and my mom got a sad meal." "Do you know why?" "No, why?" "Because grown-ups don't get toys with their food, and that's just sad." So there you have it, the original sad meal. Since it's targeted to adults, the McDonald's sad meal now contains warm, flat pop. The ice is already melted. 4 hours old, cold, heavily salted fries. McDonald's burger patty in between 2 leaves of warm, wilted lettuce. It has nothing on it but stringy onions and a massive amount of mustard. The prize is a McDonald's gift card with 52 cents on it. Introducing McDonald's Sad Meal, trademark. We're giving you even more reasons to be sad, and not just because you still eat at McDonald's. Choose from such luscious menu items as half-cooked hot dog, burger that smells like piss, apple packet with 1 apple slice in it, a drink that has the diet bubble pressed down in and it's actually just regular Coke, only the overcooked fries, and many more. In addition, any McDonald's order you place can be upgraded to a sad meal at no extra charge. Claim does not include customer's dignity, but that's not all. For a limited time, we'll also be including special toys with your sad meal. Pick from such toys as a bottle of Viagra with attached note saying, "You'll need this eventually." A checklist for all other sad meal toys with 3 toys you won't ever get. A spiked heroin needle. A crumpled piece of paper saying, "Firefly is never coming back." The nutrition labels were cut off other McDonald's products. 250-piece puzzle with 245 pieces. And many more. What are you waiting for? Come pick up your very own McDonald's sad meal today. Order one in the next week and the staff will even shed actual tears when you order. Same food, no toy. The toy is a parking ticket. Depends. Is it sad meals as in the opposite of Happy Meals, or sad meals as in food you get when you're sad? In the first case, soggy, unsalted fries, half-eaten McNuggets. In the second case, anything that makes you feel better. I would defo need that one, like right now. I would buy the first one for the soggy fries. Soggy fries are amazing, if they're hot and salty. An MLM card where they tell me about all the boss babes working with them and how they are completely self-made. MLM girl working at McDonald's, checks out. Hope she washes her hands after all those poop emojis. A miniature funhouse mirror that makes you look even fatter than you already are so you feel worse with every bite of those damn fries. And they're drenched in some kind of fatty sauce that doesn't even taste good. A McDouble would be renamed McMisery, and it would be served with Diet Choke. Diet Choke? Don't kink shame. It's just a picture of the living conditions of the McDonald's employees who made the food. If it's a high schooler, then probably pretty damn good because McDonald's pays more than minimum wage. If it's an adult, I'm so sorry. Cold, soggy fries, without salt, or with way too much salt. It's the exact same food, but all the packaging has a picture of someone who died from COVID-19 and a description of their lives and personality written by one of their loved ones. As a bonus, it could be someone who worked for McDonald's. Quinoa salad, raisins for dessert, a razor for a toy. I was thinking more like cream of wheat. It is just so depressing of a food. Your meal comes in a box that has a sad face on it. It has questions all over the inside that asks about your career, your finances, your romantic relationships or lack thereof, your family, your grades, your bank balance, and when you last checked it. Anything that would cause sadness and anxiety. You open the box, you get a cookie in a bag. The cookie is broken, and either the cookie goes flying when you open the bag, or the bag won't open and you must open it with scissors or a knife. Your entree comes in a box marked sad entree, open with a frown. They misspelled frown on the box. Your entree is fine, just either a bit too hot or a bit too cold. You get a bag filled with half fries and half carrot and celery sticks. The carrots and celery are now warm from the fries and very greasy. The fries are getting cold and now smell of carrots and celery. Your toy is a pack of stickers with sad faces on them and a sad figure of Ronald McDonald, but he is badly painted. He doesn't do anything except stand there being sad. He glows in the dark and gives you a fright at night. Your bleak existence is now a bleaker by the presence of the sad meal. Box filled to the brim with fries. Now you can eat them like popcorn or ice cream while watching sad movies and crying about life. Overboiled, extra salt spinach on a tofu bun with 3 times diluted water lemonade Coke mix. The toy would 90% of the time be a sticker that just says, "Your parents have sex," and the other 10% of the time would be a grow in the water toy that dissolves into nothing instead. Cheeseburger, only meat and bread. No fries, just apple slices. The drink is lukewarm water. They also forgot napkins and a straw. No sauce allowed. It's still a meal, but damn is it disappointing. OP said sad, not torture. The apple slices would be okay, but the lukewarm water is just awful. While it doesn't often happen, McDonald's can produce a sad meal with the following combined: toy out of stock, hour-old fries, a soft drink with syrup running out so it looks like lemonade but tastes like soda water, and 1 nugget missing. A collectible playing card of a recently deceased public figure whose work you associated with a particularly treasured memory or time period in your life. A cassette tape with the following playlist: 90 songs to cry to, Seal, Kissed by a Rose, Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, No Doubt, Don't Speak, The Verve Pipe, The Freshman, and Oasis, Wonderwall. A plain hamburger, 2 saltines, a water, and an edible McUnfortune cookie. The chicken nuggets are actually breaded Brussels sprouts, and the ketchup is barbecue sauce. I worked at McDonald's back in the day, and somebody ordered a Happy consisting of chicken nuggets with no sauce, apples instead of fries, no toy, and water. I still get annoyed thinking about this. That seems like a normal thing to get for a toddler, not saying they should eat McDonald's at all, but still. Coffee with a shot of vodka and 1 cigarette, also known as the Slavic breakfast. 2 chicken nuggets, a handful of soggy cold chips that are more oil by weight than 1 potato and covered in green patches, a soda with the very last few drops of syrup but not enough to stop it being crystal clear soda water, and a toy that one of the privileged redneck kids left behind because they already collected the whole set because they eat macas for dinner every night. The food is exactly the same as a Happy Meal, except there's information plastered all over the packaging about the health outcomes you can expect from a McDonald's heavy diet. A handwritten note that says, "I have to tell someone. We've been lying for years. The ice cream machine isn't really broken. We've never even had one." A Happy Meal, but the burger box has pictures of the mince room of one of their factories. The chips have statistics from how many pesticides have been on them and how many minimum wage immigrants' hands they've been through. The cola is just pictures of rotten teeth and information about how impressively acidic Coke is. The toy is just a sachet of salt, additives, and a scannable barcode giving you more free ice in your next extra large cola. Bias, worked in a meat factory. For Aldi and local grocers, I don't think we supplied McDonald's. Some cold fries, no cheese, no lettuce, no burger, no onion, just the bread. During this, The employees cry as they watch you eat. It is a terrible time. You wake up and realize you're in a hospital bed. It is a relief you are alive. No patty in the burger, uncooked chips. The ice cream machine is working, but the ice cream is more liquid than solid. The drink is completely flat and completely ice. A toy made from a recycled packing bean. A cup of McWater, a slice of McBread, and a small tub of McRice and beans. McSad meal. Ha ha ha. Half $100 bill. The burgers are wrapped the same, but movie spoilers are on the inside of the wrappers like a Laffy Taffy. The cashier shortchanges you too. Same day old, sun-baked, partially opened ketchup packets, and some cold fries. Except the fries aren't wrapped in a standard McDonald's cardboard, rather a letter from a school you applied to that says you didn't get in. All topped off with some flat Fanta and a single raw chicken nugget. That is a sad meal. 2 pieces of bread with a slice of toasted bread in the middle and a picture of me on the side instead of chips. Oh, and flat Coke. It will only be full of burnt and half-bent soggy French fries, but it'll be completely full of them because as you eat them, it offers hope that a normal, perfect fry is in there somewhere. But alas, nope, just soggy, greasy fries. Endling animal toys. Animals that have only one known left of the species or endangered animals with a quick blurb on how, why they are dying off. Looking at us humans, or on an empty blister pack for the toy you should have gotten.